TheRantCast! Alright. It is the Rantcast podcast, and you are listening to us live on twitch.tv/ TheRantCastPodcast. Thanks for checking us out here on a Tuesday night in our new old time slot. And as you know, the Rantcast is now not only a Twitch sensation, it's also on YouTube. And not only that, it's also on Spotify. So we throw up an episode, and it appears on the other platforms as soon as we can get it up there. Usually takes about 24 hours. We're not under the same restrictions that we are with HeroQuest fans or the Strange Bus, but get it out there as soon as we can. Anyway, this is the show about rants and opinions and editorials and all that usual stuff. Unfortunately, my co-host, the Strange Bus, can't make it. But definitely check out his work when you can on twitch.tv/ TheStrangeBus. Also check him out on YouTube, The Strange Bus. My work, of course, can be found on HeroQuest Fans. Of course, everybody contributes to it. It's not just my work. It's all of yours as well. XSC3, home of HeroQuest Fans on YouTube. And we do have a guest tonight, but I don't see him yet. I see that Ribby is here and Rob Champ is here. Welcome, guys. Joe Gozier. It's a pretty good group tonight. I mean, we're pretty close to filling out the Gen Con roster right here. I love it. And yes, I'm still planning to go this year. I haven't bought my tickets yet. I know I need to do that. The event tickets, that's going to be the trick. Getting those. But we're still waiting to hear what all is going on. Should have plenty to talk about, though. Tonight is the Rantcast Podcast episode 64. We're not going to be talking about the N64. It's kind of funny because the N64 is definitely a system I knew about, but I didn't really play it until it had been out for a long time. I know for some people that is their retro console. That's the one they grew up with. But I didn't get it until my sister-in-law got it for me for Christmas. And it was just like one of those things where it's like she wanted to play Mario Party. She got it. She played Mario Party, got her fix, and it's like, you can have it. So I'm like, okay, all right, well, what games would I buy for it? Let's see. Smash Brothers, Mario Kart, GoldenEye. And then I was like, I don't know. That was pretty much it. And those are all games that I absolutely sucked at. Like if I sat down with a group of people, maybe a decade, to 5 years younger than me, they would just completely whoop me at all those games and just have a blast. It's like, oh, I don't really like video games. I never touch the stuff. And then yeah, but if I put this N64 controller in your hand, what happens? And it's just like, oh, the muscle memory all comes back. It's great to see. Let's see. I also tracked down, I think it was Tony Hawk 3. And there's some other game that I grabbed. I'm forgetting now, but it was a couple of games. It's like, okay, these are pretty good. Oh, Hydro Thunder, of course. How could I forget that? And got the expansion pack, the booster pack. It was like a chunk of RAM that you could insert into your console, so it'd be just processed just a little bit better. And some of the games, had 4 players because they couldn't handle it without that. And yeah, so I don't play it very often. Mostly I let other family members borrow it. For me, it was Sega Genesis, a little bit of Super Nintendo, a lot of NES, arcade games, PC games were the thing. And then I had a PlayStation 2, Dreamcast, I had an Xbox 360, still do. Still play it when I can. But yeah, the streams take up a lot. I never thought I'd be playing board games more than video games, but that's my life now. But it's fine, it's fun. So, topic-wise, I was going to talk about some HeroQuest news. I don't see Karningul here yet. He's going to be our guest tonight. He says, be right there. Well, there's a few news items I could mention. And let's just get our flames extinguished here so the real flames can begin. Shout out as always to Karl Casey at Whitebed Audio for the music. I had a little bit of a distressing situation with the other channel. So there was an issue with the Alexander Nakarada's music. Now apparently, you know, I'm not throwing shade at him or anything, but there was an issue with the like his website. I guess he sold it or bought a different website, and then it was being used as a launch pad for scams or something. So he changed his website. So all these people have his old website in the description of their YouTube videos for his royalty-free music, and it's just like, okay, great. So now everybody has to change all that stuff, you know, to give him proper credit for using his royalty-free music, but not promoting a scam website. I mean, I didn't even know about it until I got an email from YouTube saying, "Hey, you know, this violates our rules against scams." It's like, what? What scams are you talking about? And I had to, you know, dig it up. Okay, so we're having a little bit of an issue with our screen there. Let me try to fix that. Try as I might, there's always something. Just when I thought I had it fixed. Sorry, everybody. Okay, we're not speaking with Karningul yet. Let me get that fixed here. Okay, so topic-wise, we've got a few things. So I was thinking, gee, HeroQuest First Light is coming out in Europe in like a couple of days. But it turns out actually it's delayed slightly. So looking over at Hasbro Pulse page, let's get this music down just a little bit here. Yeah, so we got all kinds of things to talk about, but yeah, Hasbro Pulse. So looks like the the UK version's already out. There is an English version for the rest of Europe that was going to be coming out the 20th of February. Now it's the 24th. Not that big a deal, but there you go. And then you got the German version, which is for March 4th. I think that's the same date as it was before. I don't think it was the 1st. And then the Spanish version, which hopefully will stick around for a little while, that's May 1st. Then I was thinking, well, what about those First Light dice, those fan roll dice that I'm probably not going to buy because they're limited edition? Well, the story on those, I was looking around, and I think it's still pre-order everywhere. But the first big page was saying May 9th. This other page is saying April 1st. So I'm not quite sure what it really is, but there you go. So you'll be able to get the tin by itself for looks like $16 from this particular website anyway. And the dice rolling tray for 16. So 32 for the whole thing, which I think is a pretty good deal because I think it was like 35 for the old one for the Dreadveil dice, where it was the scroll and the tin with the dice in it. Of course, it's like, I mean, I'm sure that that folding mat is probably cheaper to manufacture than that scroll. Although the scroll is pretty generic. It just like they just stamped HeroQuest on the outside of it, and it was the same as any generic one that you could buy for $15 or whatever. I mean, it was nice to get one of those for free at the convention, but I just don't see myself buying something like that unless I knew it was something that I could just walk into the store and buy anytime. I just don't like supporting the limited edition stuff. And I don't know, some people could say, well, without this sort of stuff, these collectors keeping the whole franchise alive, like you won't get new expansions. I don't know if I buy that. And to be fair, nobody at Avalon Hill has said that. So I think that if someone did say that, that would be kind of just an assumption. I think this is just a very small time kind of thing. But I could sort of see the time in the future where, you walk into your regular, your favorite store, you pick up your milk, your eggs, and then, well, let's see what's HeroQuest today, and you stroll through the toy section or the game section, and you'd have your game system, your first light or whatever, and maybe some expansions, and then you'd see, oh, and I wonder what the dice of the month are, and okay, they're orange, fiery orange. Okay, well, maybe I'll wait until it's something else. I could see them cycling through different colors like that because they do that for D&D dice. I mean, it's not a big deal. It's just, oh, okay, do you like these? No, come back later. Oh, maybe this color. Whatever. Because the HeroQuest combat dice, of course, have their iconic skulls and black shields and everything on them, so you could just do as many combinations as you want. These look like they're a little easier to see, though, which I've said that a million times. That's definitely a plus rather than something that just sits on your shelf and it's just something to flex about, not actually use in a game. Ah, I see Bohemyus is here. Hey, how's it going? Welcome to the Rantcast.
Oh, I'm fine, thank you.
Good, good. Glad to hear it. Yep, I can always count on you guys to show up for some rants. So I don't suppose you've heard anything about the First Light fan roll dice, have you?
Not much because it's the kind of product that I don't buy. It's not my
Not
it's
your
not for me. I don't like collectors. No, I did the same choice for all the other
ah
um, dice.
the
The
jungle dice and
jungle,
the
red veil.
Dreadveil dice. Yeah.
No, I don't like. I like an expansion with contents, not with not just
Aesthetics.
a change.
Right.
Yes, an aesthetic, a fashion.
Yeah, and what I've said before is if they were going to make something exclusive, I guess that's probably like the least harmful in my view because yeah, it's not gameplay wise. It's not like, "Oh, you wanted to play this quest? Well, too bad, you can't." Or, "Oh, you want to use this new hero? Too bad you can't because you missed this tiny window to get it." Ah, there's Karningul.
Check,
Welcome.
check. Can
No,
you hear me?
but
Yep.
yeah, yes. I, for example, the night. The
Mhm.
night. I didn't like the fact it was um, limited edition practically.
Mhm.
Okay, it was an exclusive. It was exclusive. Was a limited edition, but they fixed it because then they put it
Mhm.
in the box.
Yep.
Okay,
Yeah, I mean, I
so
think
they don't preclude me the possibility to play it just because they did a limited edition.
Yep.
yeah, I mean, I think that the info we got on that also just suggests I don't think that they intended that to be a only a few people can get it. They just didn't think that it was going to sell that well.
Yeah. I can't say too much because I know a few things, but my understanding is it was kind of an experiment. Like it seems like there was two factors, two forces, if you will, two philosophies at Hasbro. One was HeroQuest is a hot property and we got to relaunch it and we got to go. It's going to be great. And the other was like this is just such a small, hyper fan base. We can appease a few people, get some money from them, and that's going to be it, you know. And I think with the Knight, you go with the latter and saying, yep, some collectors, some, dialed in fans are going to just get this. We're going to make a bunch of money and it's going to be, fine.
And then the
Um,
brand is just going to kind of fade away.
yeah, it's going to fade away. Everybody gets their fix because a lot of nostalgia is like that. I was just saying at the very beginning, this is episode 64 of the Rantcast, by the way, about the N64. Like, I had a relative who was really big into N64 when she was younger. She saw one used, bought it, played a bunch of Mario Party, probably till her thumbs were sore, and was like, good enough, scratch the nostalgia itch. Now I've got this N64. Do you want it? And regifted it to me, and I was like, oh, cool, because it's a console I never really played, but and it doesn't mean as much to me. Like for me, it's like I got the popular games just so I could like bring it to parties and stuff, but I'm not the one who plays it. Mostly other people play it. But
Yeah.
yeah, HeroQuest could have been like that. It's like, oh yeah, I remember HeroQuest. Yeah, it's great, and you sit down with your kids and you play it, and they're like, gee, Dad, this game kind of sucks. And like, shut up, son. Let me have my fun. Like, okay, well, let's put it back in the closet and forget about it. And like, oh well. Like it could have been like that, and maybe it is that way for some people. But then other people, like myself at least, kind of go nuts and it's like, oh yeah, it's just as much fun, maybe more fun than it was back then. You know.
One thing, and I thought this was interesting in one of the. I think it's not like crazy new or anything, so people don't need to go scrambling. I think it was from like last year, but it was one of the interviews that Stephen Baker's done.
Oh yeah.
And I thought there was a really interesting bit in it where he mentioned that back when he was designing HeroQuest and he was talking about like the RPGs that he was playing in it with his own friends and at his own table, and he was saying how what they did, like what he found the most effective was actually stripping them down. He wasn't playing D&D because of the vast complexity of rules that were available. He was like trying to distill it down to the simplest version that would still work well.
Hmm. Yeah.
And I think that people get caught up sometimes thinking more complex always automatically equals better.
I see that a lot. You
And
might
it's like,
be onto something there. Yeah.
yeah, go ahead.
No, because I'm thinking about when I first got online to like look for. Well, originally it was just to look for vintage HeroQuest stuff that I never had before, but then it was to start to look for mods. And one trend you see in a lot of popular like fan sites, not just Yolden but other places, is it seems most of the stuff is directed towards complexifying the game. Like a lot of people, and maybe you can get this impression from at least some of the interviews that Stephen Baker did, especially the older ones, is it's like this was never meant to be a game that people would play for a lifetime. This was just meant as a stepping stone, an introduction. And so it's like, yeah, there's nothing to this game. It's actually pretty shallow and not that interesting. You're like, it's for kids. And so one way that some people found to make the game interesting again for themselves, which is nothing wrong with that, is to, yeah, add more RPG elements, add more complexity, more random tables, more cards, more stats, more attributes. And it's like it's cool because it shows you that you can use the assets of the game to play something like D&D or um, Cyberpunk or, some more complex game with the assets. But it doesn't have to be that way. You could actually go in the other direction. You can make it even simpler. But but yeah, there's something to be said about the simplicity because sometimes, and lots of people say this in our Discord, is maybe you play a lot of really complicated games, and sometimes you just want one that's just a little simpler, a little easier, a little more relaxing, where you're not constantly like, doing figures in your head and consulting tables and all this other stuff.
I mean, I think the thing is too, though, that it's simple, but it's also not easy, right? Like victory is not guaranteed just because you kind of understand the game.
Yeah.
Like I've had
Yep.
full party wipes on the trial before, like
Yeah, that's one of the places people die on. Well,
right, like I mean, yeah, and yes, the trial kind of is a bit out of step difficulty wise with
yeah,
the other quests right early on, and I even ended up moving it in my I
yeah.
rearranged the game system. I was like, I'm just going to move it a little later because it is a little bit of a
Well,
rude introduction. But still, it's like, it's not that crazy. It's certainly doable. And yet you can
hmm
get in there and you can, with a little, if you're not careful, you can get in over your head and get heroes killed.
Karningul, one of the reasons I brought you on, uh, not just because I know you like to talk, but it's also because I feel like my impression of you is one of those guys. It's like I like this game, but there's some things that bug me about it. But instead of just complaining about it or walking away, I'm gonna actually like use my creativity, use my experience to like make it work. You know what I mean? And I sort of, I could be wrong. I sort of had this impression that at a certain point you were like, nah, I'm good. I'm done. And I was like, oh, that's too bad, you know? But then all of a sudden you were back. And so I'm like, oh, I should really get him on here because I want to hear maybe, and don't do it yet. Don't do it yet. Give me a second. But I want to kind of hear, yeah, it's like, what was your thought process? What changed? And then kind of what got you back into it? Before I get to that, and definitely, I want to also respect some of the other people that are here who want to chime in as well.
I mean, I'm happy to tell you, but I think you're going to be disappointed by the answer.
Oh shoot. Well, I still wanna, I still kind of want to know because I have all these things in my head about the development of HeroQuest and kind of the complaints people made in the past and how like Avalon Hill, Stephen Baker, and how fans have like responded to those complaints and gone in different directions. So it could be a really interesting discussion. I mean, if we kind of get sick of it, we can always jump into other things. But let me address the chat here. I need to see this. Okay. Uh, Gen Con cast says Ribby. Seek is going to. Yeah, Seek Hashem has said that he's going to be there, so that'll be cool. Never met the guy in person. Um, oh, he's talking about tickets. So Ribby says if you buy them, you can always return them up to like June 13th or so. So if there ends up being crap at Gen Con, you can almost get all your money back. Yeah, although if you wait too long, you can't get it back. So definitely watch those dates. Rob Champ says at least 5 of us. Oh, that's cool. Joe Kojer says I suck at pretty much any video game. My OG is the Atari 2600. Nice. Well, most of the time it just takes practice. I mean, I started playing Call of Duty World at War like a year ago, and I was like the worst player ever. I'm still pretty bad, but I'm to the point where I kind of like know what's going on. It's like, oh yeah, that's what you're supposed to do because it's like, you know, a game I didn't grow up playing, and so I'm just not used to it all. It's like playing Street Fighter 2 for the first time. You're like, what do all these buttons do? Ribby says, I was great until I hit about 25 and the youngins started coming in and kicking my ass. Yes, that's true. The more free time you have to devote yourself to a game, the better you're going to fare. Joko just says, it wouldn't be a typical stream without some kind of issue. Yeah, you're telling me. Rob Champ says the Jungle's Tray was pretty cool. Joe Kojer says, if you want complicated, try making a character with the champion system. It's like 500 pages and never understood what I was doing. Okay, let me just address that real quick. So, Champions, the super role-playing game. I remember I was with my dad. I'm trying to think how old. I must have been like 11 or 12. I was pretty young, maybe even younger than that. And I saw this big hardcover book in this bookstore. And it was called Champions, the super role-playing game. And it was, I want to say maybe the 5th edition. But on the cover, it had a picture of a guy in a ninja costume. And he was fighting like this huge, like, robot looking guy or juggernaut looking guy who was like lifting like a building and like shooting like a, you know, a huge like energy beam out of his arm. And I was like, that is the coolest thing ever. And I just wanted it just because of the cover. But yeah, I read that thing and my brother read it and we read it until the book fell apart. Probably wasn't, you know, bound very well, but yeah, it was just filled with ideas. And a lot of it was very complicated. But at the same time, the idea of creating, like taking those comic book characters that you maybe read in from the 60s and 70s and 80s, like bringing that into a game where you can just like play through all those tropes and cliches and characters, just really fascinated me. But what I learned from HeroQuest, from getting into the HeroQuest mod scene, was yeah, you really can take any game that's out there, any RPG, fantasy, tabletop game, and you can boil it down to its components and make it easy and simple and accessible if you want to. Or you can go in the other direction and you can take a simple game and make it more complicated by adding extra stuff to it. Like you have so much freedom to do that. And it can be intimidating, but it's actually not that hard when you just start out. It's almost like you just need somebody to kind of get the ball rolling and then other people can like bounce their ideas off of you and you can kind of get going. And that's one thing I really love about our community is, yeah, that's just what happens. I mean, most of us have totally different ideas about what's fun or balanced or whatever, but just that conversation helps it kind of get going. And of course, actually play testing it, it's even better. Yeah, good stuff. So champions, yeah, you could definitely use that. It's called the Hero System, I think is the official name for it. It's an RPG, pencil and paper RPG. But I mean, I've played it with a hex map and just d6s, but a lot of it's just your imagination. Something in the Japanese version of HeroQuest um, kind of inspired me, kind of what you were saying with their Karningul about the difficulty, is that really when it comes down to it, if you just ad lib and you just use your imagination, like Zargon or Grimdead or Morkar or whatever, it really can be like an evil god. Like you could destroy the heroes just with a wave of your hand. Like you have total power. You can make things
I mean
easier,
that's sort
harder.
of yeah. I mean, to some extent, right? That's kind of any
Hmm.
RPG that has like a game master role that one of the players is occupying.
You have total control.
Generally, there's that meme: rocks fall, everyone
Everyone
dies
dies.
for a
Yep.
reason.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. You don't want to abuse that power because if you do, what's going to happen is people are going to get frustrated and not want to play again. So,
Yeah,
and
I think that's the
if it's
thing
too easy, they
about
get bored. They get bored.
yeah,
So you find
right.
that
But I think
balance.
that's the thing about if you're saying I'm going to make the thing more complex is know why you're doing it. I mean, I think honestly, I think this is sort of the as I've gotten older and I'd like to think become a little wiser, maybe just a little. The guiding principle behind everything I try to do is I try to know why am I doing it. What is the goal?
Yeah.
And that they can be different ones. You can be trying sometimes to hit more than one goal at the same time. Sometimes they'll be in opposition to one another. But it's like, okay, say somebody says, well, I don't like the way that you can, search an entire corridor the length of the board at a time
Yeah.
without your figure moving, and say, okay, I'm going to add a more complex searching rule that creates a search range that, so it's like, oh, you only get to search up to this point and then you'll have to move further down the corridor and search again, and it's like, okay, you can do that.
Hmm.
Is that going to make the game more fun?
Yeah. For some people, it will. And I say, yeah, if that's kind of what the people at your table want, that would be a good thing to do because that'll enhance their experience. Now, once you implement something like that, it may turn out that actually they decide that's not what they wanted, but they
Yeah.
might come up with another idea. I mean, I've definitely changed my gameplay based on feedback I've gotten, but then I've also reversed myself. Like I tried something out and I'm like, no, I don't like this. It turns out I like the old way better, so I just go back to it. And it's like,
Yep.
why not?
I mean, yeah, I think there are a couple things where, yeah, I used to tweak certain rules
Hmm.
and eventually over time I was like, you know what? I think actually maybe just leaving it vanilla was better.
Yeah. One thing I'm conscious of when I'm hosting my games, and not just to talk about me and myself the whole time, but um, I know that people are coming to HeroQuest fans because of the title, right? And so if they have an idea of what HeroQuest was, like I still want to give them a taste of that. I don't want it to be so foreign and different that it doesn't feel like HeroQuest anymore. So I still feel like I've got to keep some base of familiarity and nostalgia for it. I mean, we've got a pretty regular group now, so it's kind of like I also feel free to add things, change things, because people can handle it. And it's so much easier to just kind of like add a little bit of complexity over time, just to keep it fresh. Um, but at the same time, yeah, if I read something that I think is like new and complicated, my first temptation now is to just dumb it down and simplify it. Like I'm reading Cyberpunk or Axis and Allies, and I'm like, oh, this I don't like this. I want to change it, and it's like I have to force myself. It's like, no, no, no. I want to learn what it is first, and then decide if it's really worth changing it into something else. But with HeroQuest, I feel like I got a pretty good handle on it. I can do that, but sometimes I'm wrong. Sometimes the group wants something and it's different than what I want. So I'm like, okay, well, I should take the hint and kind of read the room and try to follow where those folks are going. So, Bohemius, did you have a thought about that? I don't want you to feel left
Uh,
out.
the regarding the rules when you want to make them more difficult. Well, I don't like to put to make the rules more difficult. Okay, slightly maybe. Okay, to make the maybe the character a little bit more interesting to play, because after a while maybe you get bored.
Hmm.
But changing rules in the game, not much. I mean, I believe the game is made to be simple. Otherwise, it's better play another game to me. If
Well, that's a good point
yeah,
too. Yeah, because
yes,
you could
yeah, exactly.
change
Like you said at the
every
beginning,
aspect of it.
this game is made as an entry point. Okay,
Hmm.
it's becoming like a thing on itself. But as you can see, anyway, they're keeping it very basic. I mean, every expansion they put, they give you the option. Okay, you can use all these options on the other expansions, but every expansion have just some extra rules. You can play just the extra rules for that expansion. It's up to you decide
Oh
to put
yeah.
them all together.
Yep.
Okay.
I've heard HeroQuest called a sandbox. Um,
Yeah, I like the
mhm.
the term.
Yeah, I mean, I
Yeah.
think HeroQuest is nice because it is kind of it's a chassis that has a lot of room for you can add things just through adding things, like just pure addition. You don't have to change anything that's already there. You can just add something new on top and just have it sort of slot in alongside the rules that are in the book, and the game can largely still feel the same. You know, like I think the Evil Wizard deck, the various ways that people do that is a great example, right? Where it's like, hey, you're not changing anything about the gameplay. You're not overriding any of the rules that are in the rule book. You're just creating an addition, and there are ways to sort of slot it in where you barely even realize that the game wasn't like designed like this all along.
Yeah, I love the Evil Wizard deck. I use it a lot. I mean, I understand the basic idea of it comes from Space Crusade because the Alien Event deck is kind of like that. Um, but yeah, every quest in HeroQuest, every official quest has those notes that the GM will read off, silently to himself. And then it's like when you come to this room, okay, this specific thing happens. Or sometimes there's like an overarching like bonus rule for just this one quest. I call it the gimmick of the quest, not in a negative way, but just, the
Yeah,
novelty, the new thing. And the Evil Wizard deck is kind of like you just throw like one of those notes onto a card and put it in a stack and just draw it. So it's like, oh,
pretty
all of a
much.
sudden, this monster you thought you killed, he comes back to life. Oh crap, or oh, there's just an extra trap just in the corner, or one of your potions breaks, or it's just like some sudden thing to kind of shake things up, and yeah, lots of people have expanded it into a
Condition
game.
where the heroes are blundering around and then Zargon gets to open a door. Like
Activate a room, yeah.
yeah, little things that right. Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at the stuff I have. Yeah, almost all of them I think would fall into that category. They would all be things that could very easily just be a note on a room in a particular quest map.
Hmm. Now, to be fair, the Evil Wizard deck is, I think they're pretty much all skewed towards helping the bad guys. But you could also make a deck similar to the Alien Event deck in Space Crusade, where most of them are bad, but there's a few that are good. Like sometimes, something happens that actually could benefit the other side.
Yeah.
Just a quick note: the images I'm showing here, these are community pictures that are taken from Board Game Geek. And the reason I put this up here is not to steal their thunder, but I don't know. I was gonna say I have a love hate relationship with Board Game Geek. I don't know if it's really love hate though. I mean, I like a lot of the things on their site. Some things there's room for improvement. Like I think some of the dates are wrong for some of the expansions they have, and Sometimes they have weird choices for like the pictures they put up. But one thing I really like about Board Game Geek is that if you are looking for vintage HeroQuest, like you can find better deals here, I think, than eBay a lot of the times because these are fans that are trying to sell them like to a good home kind of thing. Whereas eBay is just like people either don't know what they have or they're trying to just like squeeze every last, dime out of you.
Yeah, I think eBay is kind of solved, I think, is the problem, right? You got stuff, people, everything on eBay is monitored.
Yeah. Well, there's still people that are scamming on there, unfortunately. Um,
Oh, I'm sure.
there's still people that are selling stuff for way, way more than it's a reasonable price to pay. And there's, I don't know, the fact of the remake being out, I think has caused some of the absurd prices people are charging to go down. Like I feel like some of that stuff is a lot more affordable now, which is great. I was thinking back, we've been to jump from topic to topic here, but the Rantcast podcast with Amalgamash. So this was episode 4 of season 0, part B, where we interviewed him. Really great show. Check it out. But yeah, AshQuest is now what he's called. But yeah, Amalgamash, he was talking about, because I was trying to get him to say something negative about HeroQuest because he's always so positive. So it's kind of teasing him a little bit. But he raised a really good point. It's like, what's the thing that bugs you the most? Well, the fact that it's hard to get HeroQuest, like it's inaccessible. And just looking back, I mean, it's almost 3 years later, and it seems like it's easier than it's ever been. I mean, in a long time, to get either vintage HeroQuest for a reasonable price or to get um, the new one because it's available at more stores and the
I
prices
mean,
have gone down.
the new one is expensive, but it's not that expensive in the context of how just everything hobby related is expensive nowadays.
Yeah, I mean, it's not $40 and $1989. But yeah, I mean, it was 100. Well, that was the thing. I occasionally new people come to the Discord and they're like, man, the stuff is so expensive, but they're only looking at Hasbro Pulse.
Yeah,
Like $135 for the game system. Whoa, no way. It's like, yeah, you could probably get it for way less.
it's been on
Amazon.
sale for more than half off at times.
Yeah. I think Amazon is one of the better places to buy the new HeroQuest
Yep.
game system. But sooner or later, I mean, if the First Light thing continues to take off, maybe regular stores will be the place to buy it.
Yeah, with at least with the boxed expansions and the game system, I would say the only time you should be paying full retail is if you're trying to get it the day it comes out.
Yeah. Well, and even then, I think
Because
they
otherwise,
they
it
raise the
is
prices.
going to go on sale.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think Pulse. I've often wondered about this because there was a second printing of the 2021 game system. I mean, we've talked about this a
Right.
million times.
They
Smaller
changed
box.
the dimensions of the box,
Yeah,
and
they tweaked 2 of the cards, but it was like, okay, it was initially it was like a couple dollars more expensive, but then it went back down again. But I remember it Pulse being it was 124.99 and then it went up to 134.99. And I thought, oh, I wonder if that's because it's a new box. But then my theory kind of got blown up because when I went to Gen Con, they were still selling like the big bulky box. And it's like, okay, I don't know anymore. But I had this theory that it was like, oh, they raised the price because the new box, was brand new, had maybe higher production values or something. But yeah, one theory people had was, oh, Hasbro is going to lose money if we don't buy it directly from them, and it's like they debunked that right away. It's like, nope. I mean, it's just a difference of a couple of cents whether you buy it direct from them or from one of these online stores. So
yeah, I think sales in general is the thing that's important, not whether you're buying it directly from Pulse.
yeah, this does
Like
get
if
pretty
they
crazy.
release a product and that product just doesn't sell, that could be a bad sign.
Now, if you buy from a scalper, I think you're definitely losing out. Now,
Sure,
one,
yeah, if you're buying something at an inflated
yeah,
price from a scalper,
and
then yeah, you're
and people have come at me and said, I mean, I guess everything, is, uh, you can argue your way out of anything, but you could say, well, okay, well, what's the big deal if I buy a $500 HeroQuest set from eBay? It's like, the scalper had to buy that from Hasbro
Yeah, I
initially.
mean, it
But
in
that's
the end, it's kind of it doesn't make that much of a difference.
it makes a difference to me because let's say I budgeted $500 for HeroQuest and I spent it just all in one on that scalped copy. Like if I knew there was a $90 copy on Amazon, I would buy that new and then I would buy like a bunch of other stuff with the savings. So they would get more of my money versus the other. It's like, oh, they only sold one thing. But I don't know. That's just kind of how I look at it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just that's going to be that's a choice that everyone kind of has to make for
Yeah.
themselves, right? If someone says no, I absolutely must have, a still in shrink wrap, or I don't
Hmm.
remember if it actually came in shrink wrap, but if they're like, I have to have the mythic box with all the stuff and it can't have even been opened yet,
It didn't have
and
shrink
if
wrap. You're right.
yeah, and yeah, but if they're like, I have to have that, and they're willing to pay any price, it's like, well, that in the end, that's their prerogative. I wouldn't do it, but
Yeah. Some people collect things just to have it on the shelf and say, there's this awesome thing that I have. Some people buy it because they're going to flip it and sell it for even more somewhere else. Me, I,
yeah,
I just want to rip it open and play it. And I know that, it's going to get wear and tear on it because that's just the nature of the thing. But there's like a moment of hesitation when I open it up. It's like, oh man, I could just leave it in the wrapper. Oh, I could just leave it on the sprue. And then it's like, nah, you know, I,
I
I,
just yeah.
I don't have to put any paint on it. And it's like, nah, just paint it. Like just,
Yeah, I think the thing it's hard to predict that stuff, right?
yeah, yeah. Maybe you think you're gonna get all this use out of it, and then you decide, excuse me, you decide, nah,
And
nah.
then 20 years from now, it turns out the like hobbies and games market just crashes, and all the prices for everything on the secondary market drop through the floor. Like we just don't know what's gonna happen.
Yeah, I'd be okay with that actually. I'd be okay with it just being really, really cheap and plentiful because I want to be able to play it and I want to be able to see other people play it. And I mean, you can always collect something else, right? You can take the money you would have spent on collecting this and collect something else if you want. But yeah, I'm just looking at these many, many sets that people have, and it's like they mix um, homebrew stuff with different sets from different rule sets. We were talking about different rule sets, and I still have this strong desire to sit down and play the European version of HeroQuest instead of the one that I'm used to, like just for the sheer difference of it. And I feel like I have to experience it with at least one other person that grew up with that version instead, like to just see how it plays. Because I'm fascinated by like the differences, by the fact that like the heroes can attack each other and like compete for gold and stuff, and the subtle differences in the quests and things like that. Um, I feel kind of the same way about the Japanese version, although it's a totally different kind of thing there because it's focused more on like an RPG light type of game. Although I had a lot of fun with the RPG light stuff in Rise of the Dread Moon. Like I feel like that was really a very experimental quest pack. Maybe we can talk about that at a certain point tonight too, if we're not too tired about how that works. Because I think some tables that would just not fly at all. Like it'd be just like no, I'm not interested in that. But other people would just go nuts with it. So if you guys are ready, I kind of want to dive in and I kind of want to ask Karningul my burning question. So I guess maybe you could start off by saying what was it that kind of like, if this is the right term, discouraged you about the new Hero Quest, and then what brought you back? The floor is yours.
What do you mean by discouraged?
Um, like I had this impression that when they released like Rise of the Dread Moon and Jungles of Delthrak, you were like, nah, I don't really like the way they wrote this, or it didn't interest you as much as you hoped you would, and so you felt
It,
like I'm gonna have to change this to make it, and then is it really worth the effort?
Yeah, I mean, I do have a fair amount of creative differences with some of the direction, the creative direction that
Oh,
they've been going in.
and let me interrupt you one more time. Uh, the reason I'm asking this is not just because I feel like, your opinion needs to just destroy the world, but also because I feel like there's other people out there that have expressed kind of that same thought. And so I think it's something that we should talk about. Anyway, go ahead. I'll shut up now. Yeah, so some creative
But it
differences.
was never, yeah. So I mean, so yes, I did and still do have creative differences that are kind of like, yeah, everything that they put out has pretty much been okay, I'm gonna need to do a bunch of rewriting for some of this stuff.
Hmm.
But I don't mind doing that. And I've had, it had to do a fair amount of rewriting for some of the classic stuff too.
On a certain
Um,
level, do you enjoy doing that, or is it like a chore? Like if
if
only it
it
was.
if it doesn't get too excessive, there definitely are times where it can get where it can bog you down. The having to essentially rewrite the entire story of Spirit Queen's Torment has me a little annoyed right now.
I have not played it yet, so I'm going to be super interested to see what you come up with.
Well, I'm trying to keep the gameplay mostly the same. That's always sort of been what I try to do is I call it sort of enhanced vanilla, right? Where if you aren't paying super close attention,
French
or
vanilla.
I don't want you to notice that I've changed anything. Like I want it to feel like it absolutely could have been the quest that just came out of the book.
Oh, nice. I like that. Like feeling like it's in the spirit of it.
Yeah, I just and there was a topic on the subreddit recently that I kind of agree with, which was I wouldn't even say I'm fixing things. I'm changing them to suit my own aesthetic preferences.
Yeah.
It's But yeah, but anyways, I drifted out of I just wasn't as active for a while though. I think the kind of thing that you probably noticed just
Mm.
it just was coincidentally that when some of that stuff was coming out, I just got a little bit burned out and had to take a break.
Oh, yeah, sure. Well, it's just a hobby, right? So,
Yeah, yeah, it was just sort of, and I was playing a lot of classic World of Warcraft, and that was just eating, you know,
uh,
the time you spend there expands to fill the. It's like an ideal gas. It expands to fill the time available.
yeah, 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 I hear that. Well,
You know,
I
but it was always something where I expected to come back once kind of this situation changed.
so I think that's helpful to hear all that you've been saying there because I think some people could hear what you're saying and go, "Man, this guy, like, can't he have any fun? Can't he appreciate, all the hard work they put into this stuff? Like, he's got to change it, he's got to fix it." Like, but I see it more as actually what you're doing is you're doing what Doug and Chris and all these guys at Avalon Hill have been saying all along, which is they already know that fans do that with HeroQuest is you tweak it and you take it in your own direction. And they expect you're going to do that with their new creations as well. It's not like anything personal like, "Oh, I feel sad that you ruined it for me." It's like, "No, no, I give it to you in this package and it might have some rough edges and you decide if you want to polish this, edge and turn it into your own thing and make it your own." So I think they were, especially in that last interview that I had with Doug at Gen Con last year, he was very positive about loving to see what things people came up with. And it's like he purposely, and the other people did too, they purposely put things in the game that were maybe like half finished or which is a weird thing to say because you say, well, why would you leave it half finished? Why would you put gaps in your story? That's lazy. It's like, no, no, no. They gave you a complete package to work with, but then they also kind of like left little I don't know, breadcrumbs that you could pick up and like form into something. You could take it off in another direction. You could snowball it into something else. So like the big example was the goblins with the boomerangs and bombs. It's like, why do that? Why not come up with like a complex mechanic for like how those work? Well, he just figured, people will do that anyway. Just gotta take a drink here.
Yeah, that I've already seen some pretty in-depth stuff. Uh, some very high quality diversification to use the figures and have them kind of be that each one be its own unique thing, and not just sort of say, they're just archers.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because my first impulse when I saw that was to just ignore it. To say, nope, these are goblin archers. They've got bows, just like it says in the text, from 1990. um, but then I started using those goblin boomerangs. And it's like, oh, well, these guys are just cannon fodder anyway. What's the harm in just saying, yeah, he can throw the boomerang and it hits like 3 heroes at once? Like, and I just had so much fun with that. Like, I started finding, ways like, oh, I could insert another boomerang goblin into this particular quest to kind of jazz it up a little bit. And then all of a sudden, these little pipsqueak goblins are not completely useless. I mean, occasionally you
Yeah,
do want to have, just absolutely slaughter this room full of monsters, and then the one little goblin like runs away in terror. It's like, look at him go. But yeah, it's also been fun to kind of play around with, the tools that I'm given, even if it's not strictly what's written. I'm just so fascinated by the different ways people paint these figures. Like I feel like I've just started learning how to paint. Like, even though I've been dabbling at it for years.
I haven't been able to do any painting in a long time, and I'm hoping sometime in the next couple of years I'll be able to get to
Yeah.
actually start painting up my set. And
Yeah, it's a big
yeah, we'll
undertaking to get
see
it
it.
all
We'll
done.
see if I've learned anything.
Well, I started with the furniture, and it's like I still have this thing where it's like I don't want to paint the originals. I want to paint like 3D prints of the originals. And so thankfully I have a lot of 3D prints now. But yeah, I started with furniture, and it's like then I moved on to monsters, and I haven't painted any of the heroes yet. I guess that's going to be like the hardest thing. But I feel a lot more confident. But I mean, I figure like, well, if you screw up a zombie's face, I mean, he's a zombie. He can look scary and weird. But a lot of these, I mean, they look fantastic. But some of them, when you zoom in, they don't look that great. But when you zoom out for the table, they look fantastic. So, and it is whatever level of quality you're looking for. I'm just like this
Yeah,
picture that I'm looking at right here. This is so subtle, like most people probably wouldn't even notice that when you're playing. They just be like, did you paint that? I can't even tell. But for this guy, it was probably like, yeah, until I put that on there, it wasn't done. Now it's done, and what a good feeling that is, you know. Or what's the point of this? I mean, it's just very very simple, but yeah, for someone's level of completeness and presentation, that's like the best thing ever. And in context on the board, it looks great.
yeah. I mean, I've seen some really absurd paint jobs on occasion.
Yeah. Well,
Uh,
and I
I
feel
don't.
like I understand. Like sometimes you get a color and you're just like, I really like the way this color looks. I'm gonna find an excuse to put it on a model. Like it doesn't matter. Nothing else matters except the fact that I'm just putting it on this model.
Yep.
Yeah, I like this. He's got like 4 different designs of wizards. Yep.
Yeah. One thing I think people obviously can kind of go their own directions. I don't necessarily think that I'm going to paint every hero with kind of a matching color scheme. And I mean, in the sense that, like, I have the mythic tier, so I have the gender swaps of the heroes that are
Hmm.
essentially they're the same design mostly, right? Like the female dwarf and the male dwarf are basically the same figure, just one's a guy and the other's a lady. And their artwork is basically like the official artwork on their cards. You'll see that, oh, they basically use the same color scheme and everything for their clothing and their equipment and everything. And it's like, well, you can do that. You know, you can paint both wizards and give them the same color
Oh
cloak and
yeah,
give them the same design on their tunic and all that. I'm probably just going to say, nah, I'm just going to do whatever I feel like when I pick up a particular figure.
oh for sure.
So, so the wizards, they're not just necessarily going to end up being carbon copies of one another.
Yeah. Well, it's nice to have a guide. I think early on, a lot of people were just like, okay, I'm looking at the hero card. Okay, he's got his shirt's purple, his cloak is
Right.
yellow. Okay, that's what I'm gonna do. I'll try to make it look as close to that as possible. I liked how in the original Hero Quest, though, I mean, on the box you had certain color schemes and designs. On the cards, it was different. So you had like choices, even if you were trying to like make it, canon accurate. There wasn't just one presentation. So you had the dark skinned dwarf, you had the light skinned dwarf, you had the chaos warrior with like the shiny metallic armor, and then you had the chaos warrior with the red armor. It's like you had the orcs wearing blue, the orcs wearing orange. You had uh,
I mean, yeah, in my own
stone
set,
colored
my own classic
gargoyle.
set, I've
Yeah.
got a Chaos Warrior that's like
Hmm.
black, and not even like a armored black. It's just like a flat black.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I love the black figures. The trouble that I have is when it's just pure black like that, you can't see the detail on the board. It's just to me, I mean, maybe other people with better eyesight than me, but it's like it just looks like a blob, just like a shadow, which is kind of a
Yeah,
cool effect. But I mean, like you have to point a bunch of lights at it, so then oh, I can see the face now, I can see the detail. But as far as like painting techniques to like make it dark and shadowy looking, but still have, you can see like the outlines of the armor or whatever. That's something I have to probably teach myself. Different shades of gray and silver and white. But I definitely have a certain aesthetic in my head of what they should look like. But I'm kind of torn because when I look at these, for example, it's like I sort of like the idea of like the goblins or orcs in ranks with uniforms. But then I also like the idea of each one has its own unique characteristics. His clothes, his armor, different color, his skin's a different color, his weapons a little different.
yeah. I mean, it. I think it's one of those things where it can just end up being impacted by practical concerns, right? If you're like, I just want to get everything painted, and you're like, I'm just going to batch
Quickly.
paint all my orcs,
Yep.
you'll often end up doing
Assembly
very
line.
similar paint jobs because you're just like, okay, I've got the red, I've got the red
Red out. Yeah.
uncorked right now. I'm gonna paint all their shirts red, like
Yep. Before it dries and move on to the next one. Well, and I see the practicality, and you've seen this on our streams, is that okay? You've got the zombie with the blue shirt and the zombie with the red shirt. So when you're attacking, it's like okay, I'm attacking the blue one right now. Now in a
yeah, and I think
at the
certainly
table that
with
doesn't matter, but in a virtual
well,
game it
it
really
could
matters.
though, and it also could I think improve certain things when you start getting to some of the tougher monsters, like um, if you've got a room, say in Mage of the Mirror, right? If you've got a room where you're supposed to plunk a couple ogres,
That guy's cool.
if you've got a red shirt ogre and a green shirt ogre, you can keep track easily behind the screen of how much, how many body points, how much damage has each of them taken,
Oh yeah,
and you can easily tell them apart, you know, with note paper or a
yeah,
tablet or who knows what.
yeah. One's science and engineering, the other's security. Just kidding.
Right.
Yeah,
One's operations, I think.
yeah.
Depends
Depends.
on your era, I suppose.
Exactly. Depends on your era of Star Trek that we're talking about.
But you get what I'm saying, right? Like having it be with some of those bigger, tougher ones, it's like, oh, if all your Chaos Warriors look exactly the same.
You you might lose track a little easier.
Yeah, and you got these quests where sometimes they're like, we're gonna plunk 4 Chaos Warriors in the same room.
Yep. Well, and I have nostalgia for the way just the bare plastic looks as well. So I definitely
There's
want to keep
something to that.
one set. I want to keep at least one set that's just completely unpainted. And when I've proxied like figures to go with that set, I've just kept them like solid color. I mean, people made fun of me endlessly, and they still do, and it's great. Yeah. You take the spray
Looking
paint,
at
just
these classic weapon swappable mercs.
see. I like this realistic style, but I also like kind of the comic book cartoon style that some people paint them in. Like there's multiple aesthetics. Someone put a little racy model in there, but it's all right. This is the Randcast.
Yeah, it gives you a mature content warning, when you plug this thing in.
Yep. So Bohemius, if you're still awake, what are your thoughts on some of this stuff? I know we've
Yeah.
been jumping back and forth.
Um, speaking
You're a more
speaking
talented
for the
painter than I am, for sure.
thank you. It's just practice, a lot of practice. Uh, yeah, painting HeroQuest is kind of different than painting an army of Warhammer.
Yes,
Um,
I
okay,
imagine.
but anyway, what is important is you choose a style. You choose the style you want first, so you maintain that style for the miniature. You're going to have a great result, whatever is the style. If you start mismatching the styles, that then you're going to see it's not going to
Um,
look good. But when I'm talking about style, is like you said, realistic, cartoony. Okay, you have to do everything cartoony. If you do cartoony, if you do realistic, you have to do everything realistic. That way, everything's going to look good. And then also you have to add a little bit of lore. If you want your orc, like you said, like part of an army, is better that they are like all all dressed in the same way, all with the same armor. Okay, but
I love these
it
ogres.
depends. If you want them like they are like mercenaries or people that just fighting the same cause, but they don't have a great affiliation. That's
Mhm.
always better. Just
Oh,
yes,
the classic ogres are
yeah,
just so funny.
Yep,
It's like,
yeah,
guys, get bigger shirts.
they're on vacation. Yeah. Yep.
yes, exactly. Even the
They
small
gave
shirt.
them Hawaii. They turned them into Hawaiian shirts.
Yep.
Because they were dressed with rags. You see, they don't even have shoes. They just
Yeah,
I don't even know why they're not going naked.
But but
that's
but but it
great.
does look. But then that goes with the aesthetic. Like, oh yeah, these just some old men on the beach, sipping their beer and watching the waves come in. Like, oh, some heroes. Let's go hero clubbing. Like, they'll smash them.
Let them
They
join the
they
club.
had to they had to interrupt their vacation.
Yep. Yep. They're always destroying and
Are you? Do you want to join the club?
this is the club right here. Yeah. Get it? The
Yeah, that.
Yep.
Yeah. So
And I used to kind of be I used to dislike this idea of the gargoyle. I always thought he looked like a dog or like Anubis, the Egyptian deity, the jackal or whatever. Um, and I thought, no, 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 he's got to be like a stone statue. But now I've kind of come around to thinking like, nah, it is kind of cool. And then having like a flaming sword makes me think of the Balrog from Lord of the Rings,
well, that
Bloodthirster.
is the inspiration. Okay,
Yeah, yeah,
but the
pay tribute to that.
the Bloodthirster was the inspiration for
Yeah.
is a demon.
Hmm.
Exactly inspired by the Balrog. So yes, they they went a little bit. I don't know, lazy when they did this miniature, because they could have actually do a gargoyle. But I don't know.
It it it
It's Warhammer. It's Warhammer. Okay,
yeah.
it's you can find the same
It
miniature in metal.
it's
Okay,
it's funny because if it came out today, like for the first time, I would say this is stupid. But because it came out in my childhood and it's like this is a gargoyle, well, okay, I accept it, you know. And now it's like I'm like the bard. I'm like, nope, that's not a gargoyle. This is a gar. But I did like
yeah.
how they described it in the original book of saying what gargoyles are in this world are statues that are carved to look like ancient monsters or whatever. So it's not that this is what a gargoyle is. It's like the gargoyle could be anything. It happens to
Oh
be
yes,
a statue of a bloodthirster, let's say. And then they use the
of course.
arcane rituals, the stronger magic that, you know, brings it to life. So yeah, in that sense, is like yeah, it's not necessarily that there's a race of gargoyles that all look like this. It's like this
Oh,
happens to be the one that
it's just animated stones. No,
yeah, yeah,
it should be.
right.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
when it
Not
comes to
not
life, is
not
it does.
all of the chaos spellcasters are supposed to look exactly like the chaos warlock.
Yeah. Although I still like that
No,
look though. Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
there's
it's such a great mini.
Well, and that's the thing about the
yes.
painting is like part of me doesn't want to paint it because I think that hurts my imagination because now I have to imagine the guy who is wearing a bright purple cloak is wearing like yellow, you know, in my mind. But I mean, my imagination could do that, you know. It's just but it's like you're painting it because you're thinking like, okay, in my imagination this is what it should look like. And so then you do it and it's like, okay, now I got to paint like 10 others to have all the other variations. So I don't know, there's pros and cons. So I guess I still want to have my unpainted ones, and then I want to have my painted ones. And you, I suppose you could strip the paint off pretty easily with like super clean or simple green. Take it off the plastic and just do it again. But I kind of want to like paint another one and compare. I mean, one thing that Bohemius, you probably heard this a million times, is people say just save the first miniature that you paint so that you can look back years later and go, wow, I've learned so much
Yes.
since that first one. Kind of boost your
Yes.
confidence.
Yeah, that's for
Yes,
sure.
Seve is yes, is going to teach you a lot.
Hmm.
Going to teach you that you did very huge steps.
Yeah, because you
You grew.
grew, yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. Because I mean, you could just keep stripping it down, like you paint it, you know, and then you strip it, and then you paint it again, and you never get anywhere because you just keep painting the same one over and over. But it's like, but your goal is, like you say, to kind of create a style. Like, there's nothing wrong with this picture. I know some people would look at this and go, "Oh, that looks so amateur." But really, though, if you look at the box art from a lot of those old Hammer, Warhammer stuff from like a certain period, this is what it looked like. Like this was finished, this was done, and it's like, okay, nothing wrong with that. And then the heavy metal, it's not with heavy metal, but heavy metal style became the thing they were always promoting, where they would outline certain pieces so that you see like it almost looks like a not cell shaded, but it had a very
But
distinctive style. Yeah.
that's how they hook you and they push you inside the hobby.
Hmm.
They show you that there's another level to the game.
Yeah. You
You
got to
can
learn
just
learn a method.
play with bare plastic and have fun without the need to paint anything. Or you could take it a step further and start painting, and then you see, oh, look, there's another game where you use hundreds of the same miniature.
Hmm.
So you can buy 5 boxes of HeroQuest, and then you realize why I bought 5 boxes of HeroQuest.
Yeah, I made a lot of money. Well, see, my thing is if you're having
Yes.
fun doing it, and more importantly, you have someone to share it with. Because if you just
Hmm.
do it for yourself, I mean, okay, that has a certain utility, but it's like, yeah, people can enjoy it
I,
with you.
I, I played Warhammer in that period, okay? And you cannot imagine how many chaos player were using the gargoyle to as a bloodthirster in the game. So
Nice.
yes, yeah, armies of orcs from HeroQuest. Okay, and orcs and goblins in ranks used for Warhammer.
Only
A
Hmm.
thing
lot of
there
people,
wouldn't they don't have the right base size.
they didn't care. Okay,
Yeah.
we were not playing tournaments, so it was not important.
I was just gonna say you could just rebase it, but I mean, yeah,
Yeah,
I
you
mean,
can rebase it.
yeah,
There
you
are
could
a lot of
rebase
people
it. You could
rebase
put
it
it on
too.
some kind of a
Yeah,
regimental base that just has spacers or something. Like there are ways to do it. I'm
yeah.
just noting. I'm like, but the base sizes are wrong.
oh yeah. Well, I've seen people have 3D printed like trays that have little cutouts for these bases to just slot into to create like unit tiles. And I've also
Yeah,
seen
but
plenty of ones where they just file that off and put some other base, or you could glue this on top of some other base if you really wanted to. Go ahead.
we didn't care much until we start doing games as tournaments.
Yeah,
When you start at the beginning, you don't care about these minuscule details. When you start being competitive, then every single inch
yeah,
is giving you an edge. No,
yeah.
that
Zero
that
miss,
is the
zero
moment
miss.
that you
There's our guy.
yeah,
Yeah. So once it becomes competitive, that's when it starts to matter more.
yes.
Well, now that I finally have my own copy of the Frozen Horror, the vintage version, um, I'm still amazed. I mean, I kind of knew it before a little bit, but the Frozen Horror himself has a base that no other figure has. Like he's standing on kind of a surfboard, but it's like thinner than the double base, so it's not exactly two squares. It's like two half squares or something, or two three-quarter squares. I mean, it doesn't really matter that much, but it's just kind of like interesting. And then in the modern version, they just said, "Oh yeah, it takes up four squares, but it's really like it's one square." So it's kind of weird. It's like the aesthetics trumped everything else. See, I love looking at all these. I mean, there's just so many
Yes.
endless variety, but
Another thing,
when you do it, you got to decide. You got to make your decision how you're going to do it.
another thing I want to add, okay, on all of this, um, uh, doing a connection to what we were talking about
Yes.
before about the lore.
Yes.
Um, the lore of Avalon Hill, okay, is getting a little too weak, in my opinion, and because a lot of people are just going back to the original um, Warhammer setting because since they don't have a choice. I mean, they're not guided on a choice. They just revert back to Warhammer. It's not bad, okay,
Do you think that's what
but
they wanted, or do you think it's like they?
I think no. I think
Okay.
they wanted the people to create their own new um, narrative. But the people need a little bit of guidance.
Hmm.
And if you give it too much open, and they just go and see
Hmm.
what is
Well,
the more popular and just follow that.
I'll admit that I sort of undertook my own project to say, well, how would I reimagine the HeroQuest world? And some of it wasn't like my imagination of what the game, like the story behind the game would be like from when I was like 12 years old. And some of it I definitely did buy a couple of Warhammer fantasy books from that era to try to see like what they had. And some of the ideas I was like, I don't like that, so I just ignored it. And other stuff I'm like, oh yeah, that is really cool. I want that to be in the story. So I just said, sure, that's in there. Or I thought, well, I'll take a little bit from here and there. Like some of this stuff, I thought that maybe humans were not original to the HeroQuest world. Like they came from our Earth to some alternate. Earth, but like the elves and the dwarves were already there. But then I thought, well, the chaos creatures were invaders from another dimension, and so like I had this idea, like the chaos gods were aliens from the 40K universe. So I kind of had this thought, but then I thought like the gargoyles, rather than being magical, were naturally like creatures that could like basically go into hibernation, become like stone, and then come out again. So I mean, I had like these different ideas, but I mean, dragons were in there, dinosaurs were in there. Um, I'm forgetting some of the stuff, but it's like some of the stuff I just kind of like took it as is, and then other stuff was just kind of my own thing. Like I wanted all the elves to be the same,
Yeah,
so I didn't
yeah,
say, oh,
but
there's
you
dark
just
elves over here, high elves over here.
Warhammer is Warhammer got a very complex and complete lore.
Detail. Yeah, yeah, they developed it
So
quite a bit.
what are you
So
gonna do? You're going to invent completely your own story, or you just check and you see the
hmm
HeroQuest was already in the World of Warhammer, so you just go back there.
yeah. It's easy to default to it. I feel like
Yeah,
even with and Karningul, since you've done such an analysis of it, you can probably jump in here too, is to say even when they're creating new original things like Rise of the Dread Moon, Jungles of Delthrak, I feel like there's definitely stuff in there that you could find in Warhammer if you look hard enough. Like it's not explicitly copied, but it could still
Yeah,
fit if
absolutely.
you're trying to back convert it into
Yeah.
Warhammer Fantasy.
Or, what I do, if you've ever sort of read through my stuff, I
Somewhat.
kind of mix and match. I keep chaos. It's still a thing.
Yeah, I do too.
If you read through my remixes, but I was fine with saying, they're dread spells. So it's like dread magic, the powers of chaos.
Nice.
So it's like, what do people who swear to chaos? What kind of sorcerer are they? They're a dread sorcerer.
Yeah. Well, the original text does call the Chaos Warriors Dread Warriors as well. It's just kind of a second name. I still like the slaves to darkness, men who become monsters, rather than humans who have become like monster. Like, well, I mean, it's still cool, but not as cool. But I understand why they had to change that to keep that IP separated. But yeah, when it's your imagination, when it's your table, you can do whatever you want. I like that.
yes, but I don't like it much.
Hmm.
Okay, because we have
So
we have
Bohemian,
completely a new style of miniatures, a new style of everything that is different from Warhammer.
so you think it's
And
a
I
missed
feel like
opportunity?
I'm not really playing Warhammer if I'm playing with the new miniature, with the new
Hmm.
expansion, with the because it's not Warhammer. Even if you cannot, Warhammer is a word with black powder. Okay,
hmm
guns.
Yep.
Okay, so it's different. The Empire is dressed in a different way than the mercenary that they give us. So it's not Warhammer. You can play Warhammer, but you're playing with the wrong miniature. So it's like playing with proxies.
So you would
Yeah.
say the aesthetic is so important to that
The
connection.
aesthetic, the aesthetic is not Warhammer. So if you're playing in Warhammer, to me, it kind of is. It's kind of okay. I don't want to diminish the fun of anybody, but it's my opinion on this matter because I feel that I cannot play. I cannot put like a greater demon, okay, and feel that is um in the same universe because there's a clash of style, there's a clash of everything, the
Does it,
story.
Bohemius? I gotta ask you this. Does it bug you that when I play on my streams that I mix styles and proxies and things?
No, 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 absolutely no. Okay, and it's not the. my problem. My problem is the product in
The
itself.
official product.
Okay, is the official product. The official product want to create his own lore,
Hmm.
but in my opinion, is failing on that.
So they should have done
Uh,
more to make it unique if they were
to
going to move
give
away
a little
from
bit more,
Warhammer.
even just I'm
Hmm.
keeping insisting the map was going to break everything because the people were taking it were the people that see the official map of Avalon Hill, they were going
Hmm.
to follow the new line of the lore and get distant from the old line. So the people that they want to play Warhammer use the old style miniature, the old style adventure, but the new one can play another um, adventure, another world to explore.
Yeah, I some of that I would respond to. I mean, I part of me did not want them to release any kind of map for the new Hero Quest because I kind of wanted it to just be a blank slate that you make up whatever you want. But I understood that from the European point of view, it's already been revealed. You know, the old world is the HeroQuest world. At least this part of it looks just like it. So it might as well be the same thing. And it's
They
like,
look just like it because he's
mhm,
described it in the same way in the quest. Okay, with the same coordinates and
geography.
everything.
Yeah.
So, let's say geographically, the map of Avalon here is going to be very similar to the.
Mhm.
But you can just add different place, move parts of the map that
Mhm.
they're not actually described or already set in stone.
Mhm.
And they already kind of did it with the map of the monk.
The Wandering Monk.
Okay,
Yep. Yep.
yes,
We've gotten more
because
mileage out of that map.
they're already the part of the map we localize already is not exactly the same as the old world.
Mhm.
So you can imagine a new map, a new world, but they don't give us more part of that map. It's more easy just to use the old world.
Yeah. Well, I had a couple of thoughts on that. One is, okay, so they did give us the monk map, and the discussions with you and a few other people were really fun because it was like, oh yeah, but if you turn it sideways or you turn it upside down, and if you look at this part as corresponding to this, you can kind of see it,
Yes.
in a different light. And another part of it to me is, okay, this person has way too many copies. They need to spread the love around. But who am I to talk? I have like 4 copies now of HeroQuest, and I almost bought a fifth one, and I stopped myself. I'm just like, just simmer down, Sonny. You got plenty.
So
Let
it's
somebody else have one.
we got one for every language,
I
three for
wish.
every language.
Well, so I have the original game, and I left it with a friend, and I just assumed that he was going to keep it. But years later, I met him, and he's like, "Oh, you want your game back?" I'm like, "Sure," you know. So I got it back, and in the meantime, I already bought another one, so I had two. Then I wanted to buy. A guy was selling on Board Game Geek again. Plug their site again. Wizards of Morcar and Against the Ogre Horde without the boxes, but with all the components. I was like, oh sweet. But then he's like, but you got to buy the game system with it, and I was like, oh, I really don't want to. And he finally talked me into it. But then I realized I made the right choice because it was first edition. Like I'd never seen first edition before. Like even on Ye Olde Inn, it's mostly second edition. So first edition has a lot of like unique little quirky things that are not in any other edition. And so I was like, oh cool. So now I've got, yeah, 2 copies of the one I grew up with, and then the completely unique first edition. And then I got yet another North American copy because I was trying to buy the Frozen Horror, and Rob Champ was actually the one who posted it first, and I was like, "You should get it. Don't let me take it from you. You should get it. It's in your state. You can pick it up and all this." And he's like, "Oh, you know." And then I was just like, "Okay, fine. I'll get it." And then I was like, well, but I'll offer you the expansions, and he's like, I'm not sure, and I'm still gonna give him an opportunity if he wants to buy it off me, but I definitely wanted the Frozen Horror, and it's like that's the thing. Sometimes when you buy these things, like you get a lot of the boxes, and it's like the one piece that you want is nestled in there, but it's like if I bought that separately, it would be like twice or three times more. So I feel like I got a bargain. But yeah, in the process, I have an extra copy of the game system that I don't really need. But I mean, I could give it away as a gift. I could paint it. There's other things I could do besides just be like, oh, I got this extra game that I don't need. But this guy, I mean, yeah, that's a lot.
Yeah.
So I got
Anyway,
way
you
off
were going
track.
to tell me about you were
Thank you
you
for
were talking about your opinion on the map of the monk.
oh yeah. So there's a couple things. So when I think the first time I saw a map of the Warhammer world, I was like, that's just Europe, but kind of like messed up. Like it's messed up Europe. And then I was thinking the same thing about like a Middle Earth. I'm like, if you just took the names off, I mean, in a recent stream, I think you took us through and just like, oh, this is just a parody of this town and this city and this culture, and it's like, oh yeah, okay, you can kind of see it, but there's a kind of a trope or trend, at least since Lord of the Rings, of just making a fantasy version of Earth, like it's Earth, but it's not. It's like different.
Yes.
I I didn't know this, but I was listening to a couple podcasts, and they say stuff, and maybe it's controversial, maybe everybody knows it, but I didn't know it. But I guess when Lord of the Rings first came out, the book, it was considered science fiction, and like people thought of Middle Earth as a planet, like a different planet in our galaxy. And he's like, no, no, it's not. It's like the past of Earth, but it's like, but there's no record in history of like hobbits and stuff. And he's like, well, are you sure about that? And just talking about how just perception of legends and things. It's like he took things that we have in our history and then just reworked it into a modern fantasy. And so I mean, many other writers have done that sort of thing. I mean, Harry Potter is like that. It's like you rework old stories into new stories.
Yeah, but I will argue on that
Oh,
because
okay, okay.
Harry Potter is actually on Earth,
It's taking place on Earth.
while
Yeah.
Lord of the Ring, the geography is completely different. Is for sure another planet.
So I'm wrong about that. So
There's no
he's
similarity.
I mean, according to Tolkien's own kind of principles, it's not another planet.
Oh,
It's this planet.
but in which way? I never heard that.
In that
Explained.
it's a prehistory. It's like the idea was that this is what the world was like before
So
we even
another
have our own.
civilization before our civilization, like
Yes,
pre-diluvian civilization.
and that's
So
why
different genes
all the
and
supernatural stuff is fading over time and disappearing from the world, is so that it can eventually become the world we are familiar with, where there's just humans and there's no elves and there's no hobbits and there's no dwarves and there's no
we forgot all
wizards
that.
running around and
We
so
lost all
why
that
did he change
technology.
the geography? He just took,
I mean,
and I don't see
Magic.
the logic behind.
Yeah, is it magic? Well, I haven't read the Silmarillion yet. I've only read little snippets, but people have told me, I've read summaries where they say, well, it was a flat Earth, like literally the planet was flat, but then it became round, and it was just like,
Okay,
well, that's
no,
interesting.
it makes sense then. It
So it
makes sense
could
if it's
change even
flat,
more,
and then the gods of the
right?
god Iluvatar change everything. Then that part I never heard heard of
But
it.
but
So
but I thought that was brilliant because
it's new for me.
then you can say, well, yeah, and like I said, I'm probably doing it wrong because I've only heard what other people say. I haven't read it for myself, but so that way you can say
Uh,
like civilizations that had an idea of a flat Earth, okay, that's real, and the round Earth is also real because it changed magically, miraculously,
Oh,
and then
yes.
you can have magical
It was
creatures.
an act of God, like
Yeah,
literally.
and then you can have, because people today, skeptics and scientifically minded, it's like, oh, there aren't any dragons. That's stupid. It's like, well, but there were dinosaurs. Maybe the stories were based on that. Or, oh, there's no magical creatures. Well, but maybe there were at one time and they just went away. So you can kind of fit it all together into one long
Yeah.
chronology.
Yes. It's like the Earth is the sandbox of this god. They manipulate everything.
Yeah, yeah. Who's to say? So your
Okay.
imagination can suspend it all within.
Now, it makes sense now. The geography they can change it if you do this
Sure.
kind
Yeah.
of
Putty in the
manipulation.
creator's hands. Yeah. Just like
Yeah.
when you're making the game, it's putty in your hands, so you can create it. You can co-create it. Yeah. Well, I kind of think of something like the orcs in Warhammer 40,000. How the orcs don't have magic, but they kind of do, because their magic is getting technology that shouldn't work because it's so crappy and it's just junk to actually work. So it's like, and that's just a justification so that you can have miniatures on the board that look like they're just like holding weapons and driving vehicles that are just made out of like tin cans and chicken wire and good intentions. It's like there's a built-in justification for the style, and I kind of like that. So I guess what I'm trying to say with the worlds is, yeah, if my interpretation of what people are saying about Tolkien's world is correct, it's like, okay, yeah, it's a version of Earth that's changed, distorted over time, and other fantasy genres are doing the same thing. So Warhammer has its own version of fake Europe, and maybe HeroQuest has its own version of fake Europe. So because nobody's trademarked that, everybody can do that. So if a fan does that too, that's not wrong. It's just you're just following in the footsteps of all these other people.
Yeah, like my HeroQuest world is, draws some inspiration from the Warhammer old world, but it is very much not. There's no Khorne, there's no Tzeentch, there's no Nurgle in my conception of chaos.
Yeah. Well, stay away from the world's rim mountains,
And
and then
Slaanesh, there's no Slaanesh either.
the sea of blades. It's like it just
Sea of
changed completely.
Claws.
Yeah. Sea of talons. Yeah.
One of the things my remixes do is they change all the names back.
Well, yeah. I mean, but see, you can get around that too. You can just say, well, the locals call it this, but other
Or
people,
I have the originals. I'm
yeah,
entitled.
in the dwarvish tongue, it is called, but the elves, they call it. Yeah, so you can incorporate in there. I mean, I've done a little bit of that when we were playing Mage of the Mirror and Rise of the Dread Moon. I occasionally said Athlorn instead of Elithorn. Just like, oh yeah, why not? And I mean, I was playing Rise of the Dread Moon a lot with, yes, I used the new miniatures that they gave us for the new characters, but I also used a lot of classic miniatures as well. So going back to your point, Bohemius, that it's like the Warhammer aesthetic makes it Warhammer. Like, I guess
Yes.
at least part of the way I played it was still set in the Warhammer world, even though I didn't say it, but it's like you see it and
Yeah.
go, oh, yeah.
To me is too important. That part.
So if I take one
Ah,
of the new
ah,
orcs and put it on the board, you're like, that's a new creature, that's a new monster. That's not
no, I'm not.
maybe
I'm not that picky. What I mean,
not that
what
picky.
I mean is, I told you, I'm not. You can proc a table. Okay, it's not important. It's when I'm playing a product,
Mm.
and I'm using the original pieces of that product. That the problem when I cannot use the new works thinking that they are in the old world because I know so well the old world
Mm.
that I will feel like I'm betraying the old world using these
Oh.
these orcs.
So you can't just like,
I like to split and make two different stories. If I want to play the
oh,
old
okay.
world, I use older miniatures.
Mm, okay.
Okay, because it will I will feel more inside that world if I actually see part of the world that is so familiar to me. I studied Warhammer for years. I painted miniature Warhammer
Oh
for
yeah.
many years,
See,
and uh,
I think that what you're expressing right now is definitely something that a lot of people have, and I think to the degree that Avalon
I
Hill understands that is very important. It's like that is very important to fans.
to make you understand what I mean,
Hmm.
100% is I am practically creating say, of all the new miniature that are coming out for the old Warhammer. So if I want to play in HeroQuest in the Warhammer world, I'm going to use the old miniature. If I want to play in the new lore, I'm going to use the original from Avalon Hill.
Mm, I see. Well, and if you have both of them, then you do that. I mean, that's I would do the same thing. Otherwise, it's like, yeah, I'm putting the new orc on the table, but in my mind, my imagination, I'm imagining the old orc, like, and he's just filling in for him. But yeah,
Yeah,
it's like,
when it's a proxy, I don't
yeah, a proxy,
care.
right, right, right. It's funny as we're talking about this, like the old aesthetic. Like when I look at these dice, like they're not the greatest dice, but still, there's so much nostalgia for just the shape and the color of these dice and how they look. And it's like that to me, those are HeroQuest dice. And that's why I get so nitpicky about like how close they look. And then they
Mhm.
give us the new ones and it's like, yeah, it's the new dice. I mean, I know that's not lore, that's not story. That's just a mechanic of the game, but there's still a nostalgia behind it. I like the fact that the new dice don't yellow and the paint doesn't rub off, and that's all nice. And they make a nice little sound when they hit the table, but I still like the old ones too. And so I have my original dice, and I have like wooden ones that other people have created that are very very similar to the originals. Uh, there's definitely something to be said for the love of the old look, feel of it all.
You know, I'm, I, in the last week I printed a lot of stuff from Warhammer Quest because for nostalgia's sake, I wanted to play it.
Remember
But
Quest.
I played with the miniature of the new HeroQuest,
Hmm.
and it felt wrong.
Hmm.
So I start printing miniature proxies of the in old style. It
Uh,
looked like the old Warhammer.
hmm. I've been going through all these pictures, and up till now, it's been almost exclusively classic stuff. Now we're getting into the remake stuff, and it definitely was kind of a feeling out process. I mean, there's a lot of things in the new HeroQuest I like, but then there's a lot of things that I'm like, why did they change that? It was so much better before. Like I know why they changed it, but I didn't want them to. So I'm glad I still got the original to kind of mix it together, mix and match. It does have its own aesthetic style. I think initially I was with a lot of people who were saying, "Oh, this feels like World of Warcraft," or "This looks like something from Paizo, Pathfinder. This looks like a video game." And a lot of
Only
people
the
were saying,
orcs.
"Yeah, it's just the orcs," or that some of the
Only the orcs they are similar.
yes, some of the
The
designs I think
goblins in World of Warcraft are different.
yeah. Well, people
Yeah,
were saying they look like
yeah.
the
And
Pathfinder
the,
ones,
and then are super
Murlocs,
cartoony.
big heads and everything.
The uh, the undead in World of Warcraft.
Yeah. Well, and some of it is, I think, when they showed the 3D models. So during the HasLab campaign, they had these 3D models, and they looked, to me, they looked very exaggerated, very dynamic. But when they actually finished them in plastic, they look a little more, I don't know, subdued and in a good way. but you can still see kind of some of that exaggerated style when you look at the cards, the card art. They're more this like comic book style character. So I think if they had made the models exactly like that, I would have disliked them. But um, I don't know. Some of it is like I like the elf with his super dainty hands. It's like I don't know. I kind of liked the old style of the big, oversized, heroic uh, characters. But like my criticism of the dwarf was that I thought he looked like a giant baby. Like he had an oversized head and everything. But I think looking at it now, I can kind of say, well, maybe that's just his hair. He's got a hair helmet, big beard. Sorry, it's kind of dry in here, but yeah, we're looking at some of these remake figures now. People have painted. They have a cool aesthetic, I think. But you're right, it's very different. I think
Yeah, it's different, but I don't, personally, I like a lot of it. I think
it's
they, I think there's some
I love it. Don't
quirks
get me
with the
wrong.
plastic, but yeah, I think a lot of it looks really, really good.
I like the fact that the plastic is bendy. I mean, I
Yeah,
thought
it doesn't shatter as easily.
the ministers were pretty sturdy in the original, but we definitely broke a few.
I broke I think the whip off my gargoyle.
Mm,
The wings on one of them broke.
whip are good. Well, one thing you could say about the
Yeah.
new miniatures is they individualized the characters more. Like the HeroQuest ones, I like the fact that the orcs all look the same and have just a different weapon in their hand. But it's definitely that Warhammer Fantasy vibe to them because my impression is Warhammer Fantasy is a war game, right? So I think of regimented ranks and files of soldiers, with identical uniforms, and they're carrying different weapons. And I know that's not strictly true because I look at some of these boxes from like the Old World and Age of Sigmar, and it's like they're super detailed and they've got all these like different parts on them and all these different details, which painters love. But I still think of like I don't know if old hammer is the right term, but it's like you've got just a big row of soldiers and they've all just got different weapons and it's like you could saw the arm off and just bolt a different arm on and he's equipped differently. Whereas these are it's like they've recreated the character completely from scratch. So these two orcs are completely different from one another. These two goblins are completely different from one another. So at least on the small scale, this is almost an improvement because you could say, well, these skirmishers or these mercenaries all look, you know, like they've just walked in from different corners of the world to do battle. Whereas with the old style, it's more like, okay, next row of goblins, attack, and they all march in lockstep. So it's a totally different vibe, but uh, I have so much nostalgia for that old look. It's like I can't say that this is better, even though I could see someone arguing that this is better because it's different. But they definitely made deliberate choices here to try to give us something.
And I love it really. I I, I like the new style a lot.
Mhm. I miss
Um,
some of the weaponry. Um, the fact that you had orcs with cleavers and you had zombies with like the hog splitter, that big axe that they've got. I like that because it just seems so much more brutal to imagine that these guys are not only going to kill you, but they're going to have you for dinner afterwards. Whereas these are a little more formal. It's like, okay, we're going to give the zombie a sword and a shield so he can try to fight. But of course, he's holding it like really low down because he's a zombie. Like it's not like he's not going to parry anything with this. He's just going to kind of like lumber towards you. It's a different look. But like this zombie with the machete is great. I mean, it's a female zombie, so she's a little smaller, a little lighter. But it kind of looks like you just imagine, yeah, just some ghoul leaps out of the shadows with a knife to try to get you. It's I like it. And I made fun of the walk like an Egyptian mummy. Like when you put him to the side, it's the old music video from the 80s. But I mean, that's just kind of a fun little joke too. I liked that the old skeletons had the scythe because it was like, oh, they're each one of them is the Grim Reaper, and they kept the scythe, but they changed it to be more of a smaller type of weapon. I don't know if which one's more accurate because don't they have like a war scythe? It's like a real weapon, like a farm implement that's been adapted into a weapon of war. Somebody with more knowledge could comment on that, I suppose.
Which the scythe? Yeah, would be based on a farming tool. I mean, a lot of weapons are.
Yeah, like the Warhammer. I mean, you had different weapons
Well,
that started out as farm implements, that became weapons
right,
of war, and so
right.
you have
The
the
flail is another one that's based on a grain thresher.
yeah, like you end up with like a military version of the original. So I mean, what I was trying to get at is which one of these miniatures would be closer to the real weapon? Would it be the first one or the second, or does it really matter? Because if it looks cool, that's really all that matters in the game.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure how much actual fighting was done with scythes because
There's better weapons.
you just use a spear.
Yeah. Yeah, we didn't really get many monsters with spears. Actually, I don't think we have any.
Doesn't doesn't the abomination model kind of have a spear?
Yeah, I guess it is a spear. I was gonna say it's a trident,
Yeah.
but I'm looking at it now. It has two blades. So yeah, I guess you're right. It is a spear or some type of
It was
pole
more like
axe.
harpoon.
A harpoon. Ah, that would work. That would work. I was looking at this abomination here when they did the HasLab campaign. I mean, I was following it, and I'm just like, oh, there's a male and a female of each character. Like that's what they're going for. But then when they gave us the abomination, I'm like, I don't see any like mammary glands on this thing. Well, I guess it's a amphibian or a reptile or something. But my thought was, oh, this is the female because these are like the egg sacs on the body. But a lot of people painted them just as barnacles, so or warts or tumors or something. So I guess it wouldn't have to be that. But I guess that's a creative decision you can make when you're creating the stuff. Like these are the female dread warriors. That's I think was the intention. But I mean, it wouldn't have
I
to
mean,
be.
it's
Could be
yeah, that
just the way the
it's
armor is
not
shaped.
necessarily.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's actually the thing is armor, practical armor wouldn't necessarily give away
Yeah.
where like the only reason to have visibly female armor would be for aesthetic reasons. It would
Yeah.
be to
Yeah.
broadcast to people around you this is a woman.
Yeah, yeah, right. Which you can do in fantasy, but I mean, yeah, you
Which
think
I
of
mean, people did
mail
do
armor
aesthetic
with
things.
the codpiece or the
Right, the giant, oversized, ridiculous, obnoxious cod pieces is the
right.
exact thing I was thinking of.
Well, and then there's also the is it the Greek armor that has it's like the rippling shredded
The
muscles.
muscles,
Yeah,
right? Yeah,
like
muscle cuirasses.
that serves no purpose other than just like I am a complete stud muffin on the battlefield here. Yeah, it's or like parade armor. Like it just looks really cool. It doesn't necessarily have to be. Uh, it's more decorative than protective. Now, how this could be the female gargoyle, I don't know. But then I was thinking, well, who's to say? I mean, do they even have gender? These stone creatures, because they could be anything, right? So, but yeah, I could imagine the how hard are you going to think about the biology of the monsters in your world? You can if you want to. I don't see it here, but I've also seen some people have actually painted like war paint and stuff on their different orcs.
Yeah, certainly could.
I think some of that. I mean, I recall the Peter Jackson Lord of the Rings. You know how the Uruk-hai had the white hand on their either on their bodies or on their armor, and so that's kind of another cool thing you could do. Add a little detail if you want, and you could have different ways to differentiate your different orcs. And like at first, I was kind of like, why does some of these orcs have like flowing hair? It's kind of dumb. Like they should all be bald. But then I saw the way people used that fact that they had hair to like give them different colors and combinations. And some people gave them green hair to look like the Incredible Hulk, and others gave them like kind of like punk colors, and it was just kind of fun. Or just give them black hair. See, these goblins look great, I think. So I've come full circle from making fun of them, thinking that they look stupid, to now liking them. But I
These one
still
are more similar to the Pathfinder goblins.
see that's what I was going for. Yeah, I've never
Hmm.
played Pathfinder. I've come close to buying it a couple of times, but my understanding is it's a spin-off of an older edition of Dungeons and Dragons. But yeah, the artwork is similar here. But these goblins are far less exaggerated than the first images that we saw. I mean, I felt like the heads were much bigger and the bodies were more spindly. Some people misread the images. Like this female goblin over here with the two daggers, like one person said she had pistols, and I was like, "What?" And I was like, "Well, maybe if I took my glasses off, I could say kind of looks like she's got two pistols, but no, I can see the blades." But that would be kind of a cool idea to have like a little pirate gobliness with two little pirate pistols. Would be kind of cool. Because like you say, gunpowder exists in this universe. I mean, in Battle Masters we had the cannon, and maybe it's not all in this particular dungeon. The gargoyle, I miss the whip. I really miss the whip, but this pole arm is probably not going to break as easily. But yeah, when I first saw this gargoyle, I was so disappointed. I'm like, it just looks like a generic demon. It doesn't look like it's supposed to. But I've come to accept it.
Yeah, I mean, and it's I like it better. Like I know that the original is supposed to evoke the bloodthirster, but it's always looked kind of campy to me.
Yeah. Well, I think they're both good. And if you take the lore at face value of these are just different statues that have been brought to life rather than a specific breed of creature, it could be anything. So you having multiple gargoyle
Yeah,
designs is perfectly fine.
you got also the gargoyle from the mythic tier.
Yes. Yeah.
The
The
super.
bat. The bat gargoyle. Yep. Yeah, it's kind of got the bat face and it's kind of got the Cthulhu tendrils coming down. But see, like, look at this paint job. I mean, this is very cartoony. There's nothing wrong with this. This, I look at this and I think this is a fun game right here that someone's about to play. Like some of the realistic paint jobs, I mean, they look great, but I just imagine you look at the board and it's just a lot of brown and gray, and it's like these really pop and stand out. Or like these guys, like why do they have to be blue? They didn't have to be blue. They could have been green, but they wanted to make them blue,
Purple.
purple. Yeah, you can make them like salmon colored. The fish aesthetic. There's so many ways you could go with it. So
Goldfish.
goldfish. There we go. This is an apt metaphor here. So the original HeroQuest is on top. This is the king. But then you have a very strong support with the new version. And then you have the mythic tier over here, just kind of a little side dish. Or maybe this is the appetizer that gets you into these others. Behind the remake is the classic. It's metaphorical. Wow. Okay. That's an elaborate. These 3D boards are always impressive. Of course, this is like you spending like an hour setting it up before everybody shows up. Because they're like, come on, let's get into the game. Let's hurry up. Now, if you're
Yeah,
playing with
that's
kids, they're like, yeah, we get to build the. No, 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 no. Build it like this, kids. Put that one over there.
Not if you have a specialist table, because
Oh,
they have a pit inside the table and
yes.
a cover. So you just put the cover on top. You have everything already set up when
I
you
would,
remove the
I
cover.
would, I know a guy that has one like that. I would love to have something like that someday. Yeah. I want to say Mr. Rogers' neighborhood, he had like a table and he would open it up and there'd be like a sandbox inside. It was like, that is so cool. But I mean, here, more of a realistic style painting. Looks great, looks fine. It's easy to see the pieces on the board. So it can be done both ways. He's got the little lights. It's like the fight in this room is going to be very memorable. Did all that work to make it look so cool. So Karningul, I don't know if you're comfortable sharing, but if you could pick out a few things that you've changed, or a few, I don't know, snippets of storyline from maybe the familiar expansions, would you want to share some of that with the people listening today?
sure. I mean, so this is classic, right? And I mean, a lot of the people here will probably have already seen it, but in case it's news to anybody, I just posted um, my rendition of the Dark Company,
Oh, nice.
right? Which was, an attempt again to say, hey, I'm basically keeping the map the same, and then just saying, okay, what do I need to fill in to make this feel like a modern HeroQuest experience? Smoothing out some, there were some oddities, like all the treasure chests were either traps. Well, I think there were some that weren't traps and that were explicitly noted as empty, but every treasure chest that was a trap had nothing. I mean, I guess it had nothing in it because it just like was described as a trap, and no mention was ever made of any treasure. So I rearranged things and added in some spell scrolls and potions and a couple other things to kind of fill things out. Came up with a few artifacts, and I completely rewrote the story.
Oh, nice. And so if people want to find Carnival's version of the Dark Company, have you given a special name, or this is just on the Discord, the HeroQuest fans?
It's been linked in the Discord. Yeah. It's also, I think
Custom
I linked it on Amalgamash's recently as well.
Nice, the Amalgam Archive. Okay, but on our Discord, if you go to Custom Creations and just search for...
It's in the Zargon Morcar GM.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I keep most of my stuff in there because I
Yeah.
don't want to necessarily spoil anybody if they're actually just here as a player.
Nice. Yeah, so if you join our HeroQuest fans Discord, you start out just as a hero. But if you ask for the Zargon or the Morcar or the Grim Dead role, you get access to our special section where we talk about, tricks that Zargon can pull on the heroes. Hey, I just have to say this. Sorry to interrupt, but I was thinking about, we were talking about the card game. I was talking about the card game with Ribby, which it's a silly thing because to me it seems pretty obvious to me now that they did it just to secure the copyright, the IP, that they put out this obscure card game. It was really cheap quality. And now people are selling it for absolutely ridiculous amounts. Like if you're trying to collect it, good luck. I mean, it's silly. I think that I saw one for like $800 and it's probably worth 20, maybe. But one thing I was interested in was the fact that it's the same art style as the remake, but it has a lot of like different versions of art. And I was looking for pictures, and here they are. Like somebody has actually posted pictures of the art. So as you're telling me about your thing, I'm also looking at this. So I'm sorry to be distracted. So
Yeah, no worries.
So when you wrote the Dark Company, rewrote it, The original plot is, correct me if I'm wrong, it's Hinsgrim was one of the Emperor's trusted knights, so not Sir Ragnar, not somebody else, but he and this other guy who was a sorcerer betrayed the Emperor, and so you have to go basically and take these guys out. They're dark
Yeah,
warriors.
the lore behind it is pretty sparse. There's a very short, like, couple paragraphs of exposition to introduce it, and it's basically Mentor doesn't even show up really.
Yeah, yeah.
You kind of get this like bird's eye view of a conversation in the Emperor's court where this guy is basically telling him that yeah, Hinsgrim's gone bad.
Actually, I could be wrong, but isn't this the quest though where, spoilers, doesn't Mentor actually show up in physical form and say something?
He might at the very end. I can't remember.
I thought he actually shows up because Mentor usually doesn't. It's like he usually just gives you your mission.
No, I don't think he shows up.
Well,
I can't remember.
Back me up on this. There is a quest from the classic era, the vintage era, where Mentor actually shows up. I know he does that in Rise of the Dread Moon, but I swear almost that Dark Company he also did. Am I misremembering this? Not in the fan version, but in the actual.
I'd have to pull up the PDF and
Somebody check me on that. Okay, but you rewrote the story. Go ahead, tell me your version of it if you want.
yeah. So I didn't want it to just be kind of Ragnar rehash. And so I tied Ragnar himself into the plot. And I think I've seen in the past, I think some people have said that they basically were like, they just put Ragnar in place of Hinsgrim if they were familiar with the European version of Witchlord, where it said that he was a turned traitor.
Yeah.
I didn't do that. What I had was my intro basically has Ragnar having disappeared at the end of Return of the Witchlord, shows up with an army in the capital.
Okay.
And basically launches like a surprise raid against the Imperial capital. And Hinsgrim is the captain of the Emperor's Guard, so he rallies the troops and fights them back. And Ragnar and what's left of his forces retreat into the catacombs under the city, and Hinsgrim gathers a bunch of elite troops and pursues him, and then doesn't come out. And the heroes are, and so my version of it turns the quest into a bit of an unfolding mystery because it's sort of what's going on down there.
Yeah. So maybe kind of a reverse Keller's Keep, because in Keller's Keep you're trying to save the Emperor and his troops who are holed up in the catacombs against.
Yeah, I guess you could see it that way. So you go down there and you're trying to figure out, you're trying to find. I mean, your stated objective is to try and put a stop to Sir Ragnar, who, of course, is scripted to get out of there, to get out of Dodge at the end. So, but it just puts in a little bit of
He got away again.
a little bit of building tension, because I think one of the criticisms that I've seen, I remember Always Bored, Never Boring specifically calling out Rise of the Dread Moon as not really using Ragnar. Like, it includes him, but it doesn't really integrate him into the story in any meaningful way, and then suddenly he just shows up.
Yeah.
And it's sort of like, did he even, would the story have even been any different if he wasn't there at all? Like,
yeah, well, when we played through it, I definitely had that feeling. And it's kind of like when they introduced Nightfall. It's almost like they did that just to have another reference to him. And I did question Tess Hogan about that at Gen Con 2 years ago, because I was like, well, wait a minute. This was going to be like the big story reveal. Like, you were finally get to flesh out this little tidbit. Oh, by the way, he was a traitor and he was executed. Wait, what? Say that again? Like, you're going to make a whole quest pack to explain it, and they didn't explain it. And they were saying, like, yeah, but we didn't want to, like, just spell it out. And so we were going to let people just kind of, like, fill in whatever they wanted. But then you're unsatisfied because you're like, yeah, but what was it really? So the answer was they never had to develop a story. It was just they just assumed that people would make up their own story, and then after all these years, you would still have that story in mind, and so you would just keep it consistent with whatever. So if you rewrote Rise of the Dread Moon, you would come up with an explanation like why did he turn traitor, um, what really happened.
I mean, I guess I sort of pictured it as how did he turn traitor? I mean, he got turned, and his rescue was staged. You know, essentially.
So was he a bad guy before all this happened? Like this whole time, oh, he's the most trusted knight of the Emperor. He was really
I
double
didn't.
agent.
So this is one of those things. I'm sure he's not the only one, but I always really loved that Tolkien did this. Is even though he had the authorial fiat to sort of canonically nail down any particular fact about his fictional world that he wanted to, he often just didn't.
Yep.
He would phrase his own answers to questions about his own made-up world. He would phrase in the form of speculation and surmise. He'd be like, "Well, we can probably assume blah 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 blah, but there's no way to know for sure." You know, so I don't take a position on that anywhere. I don't say whether he was already bad or whether he was turned bad or whatever. Just clearly he got captured, and then we were allowed, you know, the heroes were allowed to get to sort of quote unquote rescue him, with the idea that he would then turn against the good guys at a crucial point and cause a bunch of damage.
If you connect with the first light, okay.
This, yeah, I haven't even tried to figure out what to do about first light yet.
To be spoiler free is difficult, okay, but yes, that is the impression anyway. The Ragnar, well, the rescue of Ragnar is a staged event, like you said.
Mm-hmm.
He is back on ranks to gather intel and then betray and go away. So, but we're going to see it. I believe they want to split the story. They didn't want to put too much story about Ragnar in First Light, because in First Light 2,
yep.
and we know days work. I don't know. I call it First Light 2. But
yeah,
I call it Second Light, jokingly, but yeah.
Yeah.
Stephen Baker has written more.
Right.
They're going to maybe address Ragnar as Kolmar.
Yeah, I guess we'll see.
Well,
yeah, I mean, I reinstated, right, like, you know, talk about what I changed. I reinstated into my rewrite of the epilogue of Keller's Keep. I put back in the snippet about Ragnar that was in the original European version. Right, so that's the point in the story where the heroes are going to find out. You know, I haven't figured out what I'm doing with First Light, if anything, whether there even will feature, because
I feel like I'm going to change some things, but I haven't decided yet either.
I mean, there's some stuff in there that I like. I think there's some stuff in there I don't like, and from a gameplay perspective, what is it, 11 quests, something like that? 10. Yeah. It's just handing out all the same base game artifacts again, and it's like,
no,
well,
most of them. I think there's two that are.
Well, I mean, no, I mean, not that it hands out all of them, but I mean, it doesn't have anything new other than, I guess, the one thing that doesn't have a card.
Oh yeah, that which we know what we're talking about. But yeah, I think I caught your comment. You're just like, oh yeah, why don't I give you something different?
Yeah, I would rather. That's where I'm like, I don't know how, if and how I would work it in, because I don't want to just hand out another Boren's armor and another Spirit Blade and another this and another that.
My Orc's Bane was destroyed by that evil acid, and now finally I found the other long-lost Orc's Bane from the Goblin Wars. I see Boren has constructed another suit of his mystical armor. At last.
Well, I guess one of the things, right, when we to sort of come full circle, one of my concerns is that I don't want the heroes getting too powerful, in a sense. I think
funny.
If you're playing the game mostly vanilla,
See,
the heroes can reach a point where they've got too much stuff and too many resources and too many tools at their disposal, and it can end up
yep. Well,
destroying the fun because the game becomes too easy.
yeah, well, that's the challenge that we've been facing because I wanted the heroes to get too powerful. That was my goal, like as Zargon, because we were playing the hardest quest packs at the start, at the beginning. We started with the Frozen Horror with brand new heroes, and not only that, but people who had never played HeroQuest before. Like that was our beginning. So my challenge was to get them up to speed as quickly as I could, not by breaking anything that was already there, because I wanted to just tackle the quests as they were written, but I wanted to add things on. So I gave them more opportunities to get potions, more opportunities to get artifacts, stuff like that, and I used the leveling system. But because I started there, it's like now as we're moving into easier quest packs, it's like, okay, well, I don't want you to just lose everything that you've got, right? All that progress that you made. But now I'm feeling more free. And Bohemius and I have talked about this. Um, I'm feeling more free to just like introduce just wild new things, because it's like it'll be a surprise, but it won't hurt anything. If I want to have a monster that suddenly has like special dice that are really good, or has new powers that we've never seen before, stuff like that, new surprises, twists and turns. So I could see myself playing
Sure.
First Light with stuff
New
like that.
challenge.
New
Yeah,
challenge, yeah.
because if you become too strong, then everything is like too easy. Like exactly is like you're
Yeah, I mean, I
strolling
think
through the dungeon without you're doing it just to complete the quest. And in the end, you don't have you're not scared even that your character can die.
yeah.
Taking
Well,
away a little bit
what do
of
you
the fun.
what do you guys think about this? Because not to reveal all of Zargon's secrets, for more, go to the HeroQuest fans Discord and go to the Zargon section, GM section. I feel like First Light in its story is kind of like giving you permission to start fresh. Not to reset the heroes necessarily, to say, oh, let's go back in time to a time when they were weak and level one and had just basic gear, but to say, this is a different group of heroes in another area on another mission. Would you say that that is something that you would want to do, or would you want to say, no, 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 that's not what it is?
It just doesn't work for the way I'm intending to run the
Okay,
game.
okay.
Because I'm using a 9-hero party,
Oh, wow. Okay.
right? Yeah, we've talked about this on the Discord, right? I have
Yeah.
9 here. I have the first not the basic 4, and then the first 5 new heroes that were released are the party that I'm permitting my players to use, and they pick 4 of them for each adventure, and with certain circumstances, potentially knocking out a hero for a quest or two.
Now
Or
I'm remembering. Yeah, yeah. No, no. It's coming back to me what you were saying. So it's not that you're playing with 9 heroes at the same time. You're just saying this is like the pool of characters they can choose from, like almost like having lives or like in a video game. It's like, oh, that character got beaten, so he has to sit out. He has to sit on the bench. Or
part of what I'm trying to do is not require that the same 4 players have to be there every session,
oh yeah,
and not try to sort of create a situation where people aren't.
yeah.
I mean, maybe they will anyway, but where people don't feel compelled to have a
Don't use
particular
yeah, like don't use the barbarian. That's Ribby's character.
right, where it's like the characters aren't specifically allocated to a specific real life person. It's like, no, anybody in the party could choose to play a barbarian in this quest, and the party only has one barbarian, but anyone could decide to take it this quest, as long as the players will have to amicably figure out, if both 2 people want to play the barbarian, they're going to have to work out which of them is a way to take turns or something. But well, there's no berserker.
Oh, okay, okay. Okay, so which ones are you using? Elf, dwarf, wizard, barbarian, and
Then warlock, knight, rogue, druid, and bard.
you're using the bard. Oh, brave boy.
For now, I'm just not sure what I would replace it with.
pirate cleric.
I like the monk mechanically, but the monk has no progression.
I love the monk.
Like there's just it springs fully formed into being, and there's basically nowhere to go. Like what do you even buy for the monk? I guess potions.
Nunchucks, those little throwing darts, the spear with the little.
None of which have equipment cards.
Well, you got to make them.
Well, but that's the thing is, it would be, I mean, making an entire suite of artifacts for one hero that's not even going to be used. You know, who knows how often it's actually going to be used,
Oh yeah,
and I feel like the monk is tricky too. I think from a balance
I
perspective,
love the
their
monk.
abilities are powerful,
Hmm.
and I don't know. You know, you beef up a monk too much with custom equipment, would they end up upstaging the other heroes? I don't know.
Well, one thing I think Bohemius, you were the one that brought this to my attention, but remember there was that conversation about was it with Doug Hopkins saying how like, well, if we ever have a potion in the future that restores a skill, like it would work for the monk's ability. Remember his twisting torrent? And
Yes.
then in Jungles of Delthrak we actually got a potion,
Yes.
and I think I even said this. I'm like, what's the point? This is the same as before, and you were like, no, actually, it's a spell or skill,
Better skill, and it's limited to one use per quest.
one per quest.
So
Yeah, so he gets a second
mm,
chance, let's say,
yes.
to use his ability. So it could be like, oh, he used fire, but he gets it back.
Hmm.
He can use it again.
Yes.
So that'd be one way to power him up, but also prevent him from just completely dominating everyone, so that nobody else gets to do anything fun.
Uh, yeah. Yes. 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 Well,
Yeah, it's
just
just
to
it would be a lot of work figuring out the
just
way
take
I.
a little
But
step
that's
back.
but that's
Okay.
just one little thing. That's just one little thing. So yeah. So to
It's
your
just
your point, it doesn't fit in with what you're trying to do with your heroes yet, at least.
yeah, it would take work to figure out how to make that work, and it's not work I am particularly.
Yeah, you work on the things that are fun for you. I mean, you've
Yeah,
already rewritten. How many of the quests have you or quest packs have you rewritten? Do you think?
I can take a peek at my Google Drive and tell you. And I'm doing another pass back through them now because the guy who does the HeroQuest builder, he just put in formatting for the quest notes, so you
Ah,
can
nice.
bold and italicize and put in bullet points and surround stuff in
Squidge
boxes and
monster.
create stat blocks that actually are well formed. You can do all that stuff now, so I'm doing a pass through all my quests to rearrange the quest notes to look
Well,
more.
kudos to Squidge Monster. Yeah, hquestbuilder.com. It's a website. It's free where you can. It's like a
And
point click
I'm
interface to
tweaking
create your own
little
quest.
things here and there as I go.
Yeah.
But
Well,
yeah, basically, I have redone the game system, Keller's Keep, Prophecy of Telor, Return of the Witch Lord, Dark Company, um, Frozen Horror, Mage of the Mirror. I think have, at least in theory, were completed at one point, and I'm going to be going back through all of them again.
wow.
Um,
And now,
I've
I don't say this to be in any way judgmental, but have you actually played any of these new ones that you've made?
oh no,
But will you?
no, this is. I mean, eventually, yeah. I got a baby due in about a month and a half, so
Oh,
it's
oh
going to be a
man.
while, I think,
Oh man.
before the board hits the table again.
Oh well, congratulations. Yeah. Well, a fun hobby to pass the time in the meantime, and maybe someday you will be playing it with your
And
child.
yeah, the hope certainly is that
Yeah.
I'm going to be. I will be bitterly disappointed if it turns out that my kids just have take no interest in my hobbies.
Gotta train them from an early age.
I mean, my toddler loves Legos, and so do I. So
There
we
you
got
go.
that in common at least.
HeroScape. Yep. Well, I appreciate the work that you do, and I think it's definitely an inspiration for a lot of people who maybe think that they can't do it. I mean, I am under the impression that you've been modifying HeroQuest since the '90s. Like you got an early
That's right.
start on this stuff. Yeah,
Yes, I have been tweaking things since,
nice.
yeah, basically since the game came out.
Yeah, and you're not the only one. But for me, I mean, I wrote a couple of quests back in the day, but my memories of playing HeroQuest back then was as a hero. Like my younger brother was Zarkon, and he did a great job back then, and it's a joy to play with him now because he's so flexible and versatile. Like he'll just come up with stuff like off the top of his head. I'm just like, how do you, where do you get all this stuff? But for me, I have to like plan it out more, and yeah, I'm just like a lot of times I'm afraid to try new things because I'm like, oh man, I'm gonna break it, and it's just like I don't know. There's a little bit of a hump I have to get over when I'm creating new stuff, but it's much easier for me to take something that already exists and modify it. So that can definitely be an entry point, and it doesn't have to go any farther than that. If you don't want to create something completely original, you can just riff on something that's already out there, whether it's something official, something that somebody else has put out, some mod. It's like, oh, I like
Yep.
that, but I'm going to take it in this direction. You know, like
Yep. And yeah,
whatever
you know, and
inspires
the
you.
the the changes are mostly fairly minor. There are a lot of quests that are essentially vanilla, and maybe I just like clarified the wording on a couple of quest notes just to sort of make sure that I eliminated ambiguity about how something was supposed to work. Or
Hmm.
then there are quests where, you know, like if I don't know how much we want to potentially spoil things, but you know, in the game system, there's a quest that has random teleportation, and
Well,
I restructured it to be a puzzle instead.
oh nice.
So that's a pretty substantial change to the mechanics of that quest.
You
I
know,
that's closer, other than the fact that I basically left the room layout the same.
nice.
I basically wrote that quest again from scratch because I had to come up with a mechanic for, well, how do you know, travel from place to place? It's like, well, there's got to be had to come up with a, you know, deterministic way, and for it to be a pattern that the heroes in theory should be able to figure out. And a couple of people saw it when I posted it and for comment, and they were like, "I'd like to try running this. Is that okay?" I said, you know, and
Nice.
I'm always like, absolutely. If I post something, I want people to take it if they think they can incorporate it, or even if you just want to run it straight off my Google Drive, feel free.
Nice.
But I think Asabar, Asabar, I don't know how he pronounces his.
Yeah, I thought it was Ace Bauer, but yeah, I don't know how you really would say it. Yeah.
He took it. He took basically exactly as I wrote it. He put it in his like revised game system, and somebody else from the Discord was about to run the quest and was like, "Hey, can I steal this?" And I said, "Sure." And so I got a play test. I got a play test on that. And he was like, "It worked like a charm. Like they went around, they figured out, yeah, they figured out the puzzle, and it was a lot more. You know, again, it's, you know, it's not that the original is broken and needs fixing per se. It was more just I said, you know what, I think I would prefer not to have it be a random thing, but rather to have it be something that the heroes have it be a puzzle that they have to solve. That's the direction I would prefer to go with it.
Yeah. Well, I know that the original designers, like I think in the Adventure Design Kit, they say don't put in puzzles. Like they were against that, especially hard ones or like math problems and stuff like that. But I know that there's definitely tables where people want that. They're like, oh yeah, they're
Well,
you
the
could create.
dungeon is the puzzle.
Yeah, I know what you're saying, but I mean, like you could create something specifically like that your group is gonna get. Like your specific group is gonna appreciate whatever it is you're giving them, as opposed to like trying to create something that's going to be universally accepted by like anybody that would play the game. I don't even know what your puzzle was, but I'm just saying in general. I think they were trying to phrase it in the sense of like don't make something that's so difficult and obscure that it like distracts from the game itself.
Yeah.
But I mean like if you ever look at the Dave Morris quests from the HeroQuest novels, like there were puzzles in there, but they were like really easy puzzles.
Yeah. I mean, this is not, you know, it's sort of a like officially, right, the remake is for 14 plus. I would expect 14, 15-year-olds to be able to solve this.
Okay, sure.
I would probably expect 10 or 12-year-olds could probably figure it out. 6-year-old, 8-year-old, they might struggle, they might get frustrated, they might if they were willing to persevere, they might eventually brute force it. I don't know whether they'd be able to pick up the nuances of the puzzle, but
Mhm. You could,
like I said, somebody
with
ran
their.
it and came back and said that it worked. So
Oh, that's good. Well, you could help the kids with their homework, like insert the puzzles from their homework assignments into the quests, so they can.
I mean, it's full of hints. Like it's not, you know, it's got a whole bunch of instructions to read certain things to the heroes that honestly are kind of, again, this is the spirit of HeroQuest to me, right? Is it's not supposed to be, you're not supposed to need to be Sherlock Holmes to figure this stuff out. So it's got a bunch of hints that are pretty blatantly knocking you over the head with like, hey, this is what you need to do to figure this out. But they still have to do it.
But if you were playing with Sherlock Holmes, you could always up the game to his level, or maybe he just would like a break and just
I mean,
play
I
a
don't know.
mindless
Yeah.
game. He's had enough of solving crimes for the day. It's time to relax. Well, very good. So, what is your thought, Carnigal? And Bohemius, I can get your thought too. Although I feel like I've heard a lot of what you've said, Bohemius, so I believe I have more of a sense of what you think. Whereas Carnigal, I'm not as sure. I got the sense that when Rise of the not Rise of the Dreadman, Jungles of Delthrak was coming out, that you, Carnigal, were a little less enthusiastic about it, less interested in it. Oh shoot, I forgot. Before I get into that,
I
hold on.
Yeah.
Wait a second. Well, wait a second. I'm sorry. I tripped over my own thought. When you're talking about the teleportation, you might want to take a look at First Light because there is another take on the teleportation thing. I think Stephen Baker took some of the criticism to heart that people had made of Castle Mystery and made another version of it. So when the time is right, you
Yeah,
might.
I mean, I didn't buy First Light, and I'm not going to be unless I can get it on sale at a pretty significant discount. So
Well, some people
I'm
may have
going to need
taken some.
access to the imagery of the quests
Well,
in order to see what you're talking about.
go into the spoiler forum then, or this in the Discord, which I created a whole thread about it, and we spoiled like everything, like every page has a picture. So yeah, you can find it. But anyway, what I was gonna say then is yeah, Jungles of Delthrak. Um, what was your impression, and has it changed as far as like you
I,
want to
I
take
mean,
it on?
I like a lot of what's in there. I like that they're branching into kind of a different idea of what you can try to do with the board. I think I watched
Hmm.
slash I guess mostly listened to Always Bored Never Boring's
Mhm.
reviews, both his spoiler free and his spoiler e
Yeah, he did a deep dive.
reviews, and I I haven't given it a thorough read on my own yet, but I think I would probably I usually end up in the same ballpark as him on a lot of stuff, and his sort of thing was, there's some quests where it's not always clear what the board is actually representing.
Hmm.
It's like, oh, you're in the jungle, but are you in a ruin in the jungle? Like, is this all somehow supposed to be happening inside a single hut? Like, what is the deal? Where are you? The quest exposition doesn't set up the scene in a few cases, I guess. And
Well, it does and it doesn't. I
yeah,
mean,
well, right. I mean, I think it does
we're
sometimes, and sometimes it doesn't.
we're into the third quest. Now, we've already branched in the story. So our
Yeah,
experience is not going to be exactly the same as everybody else's, but it starts
right.
out by saying that the jungle, yes, there are ruins of dwarf settlements, and there's like vines covering a lot of stuff, like that have overgrown.
Yeah,
and there's also these crystals that are of different
Right.
colors. And I bought one of these like party lights, and I pointed it at the board a couple times. It's kind of like a disco like light show kind of thing. The problem is my camera like tries to autofocus on the lights, and so it gets blurry, so I don't run it all the time. Plus, it would be just really distracting.
Yeah.
But occasionally I turn it on just to kind of remind everybody that's what it is. Now I also put this plastic terrain, this foliage from HeroScape around to show that yeah, there's
Mm.
supposed to be like trees and bushes. But yeah, you just use your imagination. I mean, it's the same board. Like, is this an underground
Right.
tomb?
And
Is
there's
this a
not. Yeah, they
smoke-filled
have
area
some
with
overlay
water?
tiles.
Oh
They
yeah,
have some overlay tiles, but not enough to transform,
the
the
board
entire board
completely.
comprehensively. Right.
Yeah, you're using your imagination a lot. And if
Yeah.
you're not reminded, you could forget. I mean, that was
Yep.
something in Rise of the Dread Moon I had to keep doing.
Right.
Is like most of the time you're in a city or you're in
Yep.
tunnels under the city or you're in a temple or something. And it's like there's like people living here and there's people running around, and so it's like
Yep.
occasionally like okay, you put somebody like, oh, there's somebody laying in the street, like, oh, help me, little reminders of, oh yeah, that's what's supposed to be going on, as opposed to just, oh, I'm just in a stony dungeon, like it's just taking the tiles very literally, looking at it.
Yeah. I mean, I would say the biggest issue I have with it, just from a standpoint of how I run my own table, right, is I don't like wasting content. And I think that it's cool to try and come up with like a branching story where the players get to make some decisions that have kind of lasting consequences on how the story then proceeds to unfold, because that's not really ever been done before. It's a cool idea. I think the way they implemented it, though, it's like, oh, if you just run this by the book, I'm going to get through the quest pack, and there's going to be like 6 quests that my players will never play.
Unless you go back and play it again and deliberately, it's like you read
Right,
it
and
through an
and then it's
adventure
like,
book
but I
and
can't. But I don't want to just rerun the same quests that they've already done,
right,
and just so they can make a different choice next time. So I'm probably going to try and figure out if there's some way to restructure it into
you do them all.
some, not necessarily, because I like the idea that they get to make some choices and that those choices dictate their path forward, but maybe do something where it's like maybe there'll be multiple trips to the jungle that are separated by other quest packs or something, and
I'm
sort of whatever choices they make the first time will then like lead to having to do the pieces they didn't do the next, or something like that, just because I'm like, I don't want to leave a quest unrun. It's, to me, it's like that's a lot of what you're paying for in the box is
hmm
their design, the work that they, and time and effort that they put into creating adventures. And I'm like, well, I want to run those adventures. I don't want to leave them in the quest book unplayed.
Yeah, some of these expansions that I bought, I mean, the used ones, I can tell that they only got so far in the book, and I'm like, oh, does this picture make anybody else nervous? I'm seeing the guacamole and the and the hummus and everything. It's like it's too close to the board. Drink
Yeah.
Too close to the table.
too close to the table. It's on the board. It's a character on the board now. It takes up.
Yeah. I mean, there's going to be some stuff, like with on any of them, there's going to be some stuff I'm going to need to fix, but
Mhm.
and it could
All
be
right,
pretty substantive if I go through with the kind of things I'm talking about. I don't know how it's going to turn out. But I like
be fun to see.
the skull blights. I think those are a really cool
I
model.
do too.
Some of the big
One of
monsters.
my
I'm a
favorites.
little disappointed that we didn't get like a smaller swarm of spider enemies, like instead of only getting the
Yeah,
one really big spider. I mean,
yeah.
I'm glad to have the really big spider, but I wish we also had small spiders
I've
that
got a.
were,
I've
still giant
I'm
in
glad you
the
I'm glad
sense of
you I'm glad you brought
spiders.
that up because I have a bunch of plastic spiders that I haven't fielded yet on the board, but I want to. Bohemius, just pretend you didn't hear that.
Yeah, I mean, I think the swarmling thing is cool,
Mhm.
but
Spawnling, yeah.
also the fact, or spawnling, whatever they are, but again, the fact that they're.
They latch onto you and drain your
Yeah, but
health.
I have mixed feelings on enemies that are purely tokens, like
Oh
that are
yeah,
purely tiles. It's sort of, I'd rather they had a three-dimensional aspect to them, but
yeah. Well, the thing about the tiles is they can be full color without being painted. But yeah, you're right. I
Yeah,
mean, would you
and
want
I
to
think the
have
fact with
a
the
tile of
attachment,
the
it's
monster or a nice, cool 3D
right.
sculpt?
Yeah, I mean, in vacuum, I think you would prefer the sculpt.
Yeah, for sure.
And
Well,
I think,
it's kind
yeah,
of like having. I think I said this before in another context, but it's kind of like they are still reaching beyond what they have. Like they filled the box with plastic, but they give you even more like cardboard monsters. And it's like, okay, even though they've done
yep,
all that, they've given you everything. In the notes, they still have more items and more characters that don't exist, and you just have to use your imagination because, yeah, it's like they go the extra mile. But yeah, but then you want figures for all those, and you want, and then
right.
it goes on and on forever.
Yeah, so it's there's more there that I like than that I don't, I'd say.
Okay,
I
that's
think the
something we
biggest
can work
thing
with.
that I am not a fan of is I have definitely personally reached hero saturation fatigue point. Like there are so many heroes now, and this is not unique to
One
HeroQuest.
for
Like
each person. Yeah.
I experience this in I used to experience this in Dungeons and Dragons. I'd see like people on Reddit or whatever being like, "What, they're not releasing new classes at a fast enough pace in new books." I'm like, I haven't even had a chance to play like three-quarters of the ones in the player's handbook yet. How in the world can you possibly still want more?
Well, with HeroQuest, I think the only one that we hadn't gotten to was the Warlock. Like for the longest time, nobody used the Rogue, so I just jumped in with him, and so I got to use him a little bit. Um, the Monk was pretty popular. The Knight was, right at the beginning. Um, the Druid wasn't used for a while, and Bohemius, I think you've gotten the most use out of that character, and it's been pretty cool. Like I kind of like expect him now. At first, I was like, oh, how good is this character really going to be? The Warlock is probably the one. Let's see, the Warlock. Yeah, the Warlock is the one we've used the least. We tried to introduce the Warlock in Plague of Zombies, got killed. Of course, to be fair, that was a little more challenging quest than I expected, and using like an entry level hero, especially if they go up by themselves, is pretty challenging. Um, the Bard has been interesting because we've gone back and forth. Like, I still prefer a different aesthetic for the character. I can accept that you can have a Bard, but I mean, I would treat him as a pirate or something else. But I mean, we've had both.
I just call him a half orc.
Yeah, I mean, he is a half orc. But I mean, whether you see him as a misfit minstrel or like a reformed orc who is now a cleric or a piratey orc, it's still fun. I mean, his abilities are fun. He provides a nice support role or a healer. But as you interpret the character, yeah, there's different ways to approach it. I realize we've been going for quite a while here, and I think we should get close to
Yeah, I'm
wrapping up
gonna
our
need to
discussion.
pucker out soon here.
Yeah, but I'm sorry. There's been a side conversation going, and I have not been paying attention to the chat. So let me acknowledge some of the cool things that have been said in the chat here. Recursive screencast. Okay, so this is quite some time ago. Sorry, guys. Let's see. The Jungles trade was pretty cool, says Rob Champ. Joe Koger. Oh, he already talked about, yeah, champions. Let's see. Okay, Joe Koger says, I came up with a character concept and let my friend that ran the game build my character. So he's talking about Champions, the super role playing game. It was a fun system. It was just super rules heavy. My impression of Champions was they gave you a lot to work with. They didn't say you had to use all of it, but they gave you like levels so you could have more complex or simpler. Not to the level of HeroQuest, but some flexibility. Oh, whoops. Ribby was saying people other than Kurgan get a little echoey or doubled input sound to them. FYI. Yeah, I was noticing some issues with Bohemius' sound, but it kind of cleared up. Um,
Yeah, hopefully I was audible.
yeah, it's just like, I'm just a robot. Jacer says, same as rolling a combat or combat die when no monsters, like 1/6 chance of wandering monster, like rolling a 1 on the power die. Joe Coger says, I paid $400 on Facebook Marketplace to get the Mythic box. Oh man, sorry. It was more than I really wanted to pay, but that's what happens when you don't do the crowd fund. Yeah, see, I feel bad. It's like you really wanted it, but it's like that's too much. Mythic tier,
Yeah.
not just the box of the Mythic stuff. Oh shoot,
Yeah, so it sounds like he got the whole
he got the whole.
shebang.
Okay, well, I
Yeah.
mean,
So he
if
got a couple expansions.
if you buy each of those boxes in retail, it's going to cost you more than we paid for the Mythic. But I feel like it was 150, so like 400. I mean, paying double, okay, that's 300. That to me is like the maximum. But I mean, that's just my personal opinion. I mean, yeah, I don't know.
Although, I mean, I would
Let
have
him
to
pay.
ask, if did he end up also buying the retail? Because, I mean, for me, one of the benefits of the Mythic has been that I haven't had to buy, like, I didn't have to
Yeah,
buy Spirit Queen Stormend or Prophecy of Telor because I already
well,
have them.
I bought them, and I guess I could have just been like, "Oh man, what a sucker! You bought it twice." But I liked the way the originals looked, and I liked the way the new ones looked too. And I thought, well, I want to support the effort because they've improved them and all this other stuff. So then I was thinking, well, would I paint one of these? For the mythic stuff, it's kind of weird. Like I like the alternate monsters that are like green and stuff. Like I would probably leave those as is. And the translucent ones I wouldn't paint because I like them looking kind of ghostly or fiery. But I would paint my original game system set, the 2021 one, because I have the 2022 box, and I'll probably keep that one unpainted. But I will paint my beat up first set. So it's kind of weird. It's like I don't know, does that make some kind of sense? But I'm finally to the point where it's like I've played this enough, and I know that I've got a better quality one, uh, and so I can just paint this one. Let's see. Get off my dungeon lawn. That's a great quote from Jacer there. So Rob Champ says, I'm painting now. I'm painting a Zargon from Etsy. Oh man, good luck. Yeah, it's those resin miniatures are just they're a bit too fragile for my taste. I try to paint them. Just hope they don't break. Rob Champ says some really good painters on the Discord. Yeah, I agree. And not so much that they make me feel like I can't do anything. Like sometimes I get intimidated, like, oh man, you're so good, like I'll never be that good. But just like, oh yeah, yeah, you got pretty good results, and maybe I can, learn from that. Like I look at it in a positive way.
Yeah, never compare. Just learn
Hmm.
from people that
Yeah.
have more experience.
Well, I
It's not a challenge.
I was surprised how quickly I can pick up some of the things. That it's like going from zero to like, oh, just try something. Oh, that kind of looks kind of good. Like
Painting
yeah,
the miniature, especially miniature, is all about tricks. So
a lot of tricks. Yeah.
if you find somebody that teach you tricks,
Hmm.
you learn very fast.
Yeah, and you don't have to buy the fancy contrast paints. Although I have played around with those, and they do give you a certain effect.
There are two
Very.
different ways to paint.
Mhm.
So you have to learn how to use every color.
Uh, yep. Uh, Rob Champ. Oh yeah, he's talking about the ogres with the Hawaiian shirts. Yeah, those were awesome. I agree. Joe Kocher says all the minis were based on Games Workshop miniatures. Blood for the Blood God of Chaos, says Jacer. Joe Kocher says I thought it was pretty awesome when I found out that it was based on the Bloodthirster. Oh yeah, the gargoyle. Yeah, I didn't know how I felt about that at first because I'm like I don't know if I like the Warhammer lore, but as I've learned about it, it's like okay, parts of it I like, parts of it I don't care for, but I do incorporate some of it into my head canon, if you will. My epic army used HeroQuest Bloodthirster, says Jacer. Used the Chaos Warrior as the Eldar Avatar Blood-Handed one. Jokoja says, I'm pretty sure someday in the future, when all my games get sold off, the new owners will probably strip everything and paint their own style. Yeah, probably. I mean, I like to think that somebody would get some use out of it as opposed to just going into a landfill like, this is trash. Like, oh, I'll just have some fun with this. And I think that's kind of the feeling I get from the people on Board Game Geek. They're like, yeah, I want this game to go to somebody who will appreciate it, who will enjoy it, as opposed to just somebody who's just gonna resell it again. I mean, if you have to, you do that. But you pass on the fun that you had. Dark Company, you got 4 boards, says Jacer.
You
Uh,
don't need 4 boards.
I know you don't need them, but wouldn't it be cool if you did? Like you
Thing
said,
is
it's a
you
big
don't
table.
just need 4 boards. If you were gonna try and lay out all the furniture, you'd need like 6 copies of the game
Yeah, to get the exact number, and you
to
need
get the right numbers of tables
multiple.
and
Mul-
bookcases and treasure chests and all that jazz.
How interesting would it be though if you had 4 Zargons and 4 sets of heroes, and they were each like traveling from board to board? Like it would be chaos, but it'd be kind of interesting to try to see how it would be different. Rob Champ says the Norse gods inspired him a lot in World War II, I think. Well, yes, with the Norse stuff, and I don't know that much about Norse mythology to be honest. I'm doing like a great courses thing on it to try to learn to try to pick up the slack. Most of what I think I know about it is really from Marvel comics, like that Thor, not the Thor that they actually believed in. So it's like, okay, I don't know anything. The World War II thing, though, I've heard that that's a misnomer. That it's
But
actually World
yeah,
War One,
Lord
maybe,
of the
but not World War II.
Rings. Lord of the Rings would be more influenced by World War One.
Yeah,
That was
because
the war that Tolkien fought in.
yeah, he was actually there. He fought in, and yeah, they say that some of the relationships, like between like Frodo and Samwise, is like him and the what do they call him? It,
Batman
yeah, it's like the guy that follows the officer around and like he's like your bodyguard.
does all their chores and like takes care
Yeah,
of them and everything. Yeah.
yeah, it's like you form a strong friendship with somebody like that. So yeah, that's more like it because I think I want to say it's in the Lord of the Rings itself in one of the editions where there's like an introduction by Tolkien where he's saying like, "Oh, I dislike allegory, and this is
Yeah,
not an
he
allegory."
even
People are saying
even
that
though
the
you would
ring is like
say,
the atom bomb.
yeah,
No, it's not meant to be that, and Sauron is not meant to be Hitler or Stalin or it's just
yeah,
anyway.
it's yes, he does say that in the foreword. He says
Forward.
basically that nothing is supposed to intentionally represent anything specific in the sense that he's trying to force the reader to interpret
Yeah,
something as a particular reference to a particular real world thing. But he clarifies that what he's fine with and encourages is that the reader should create associations that make sense based on their own lived experience. He called it instead of allegory, he said he liked applicability. You
oh
know,
yeah.
themes that would resonate across generations. Where it's like, hey,
Mhm.
if it's specifically an allegory for World War II, it'd be like, well, once World War II starts to fade from living memory, in theory, that would mean that the story wouldn't be as resonant with later readers anymore. And it's
Dated.
like, and the idea is he's trying to write universal things that are going to continue to find
Yeah.
purchase for readers for generations to come.
Right, rather than you got to study Shakespeare first, then you can study my stuff because then you'll understand it, or something like that. I
Right.
I also felt like I mean some people portray Tolkien. I mean I never knew the man obviously, but as this curmudgeon that like hates everything. But really, if you read what his actual words, he's very like careful and measured. Like he doesn't automatically discount and insult people that in his mind get it wrong. He just says, "Well, I don't think it's like that because," and then he kind of gives reasons. Like, I've also read that a lot of the fandom kind of embarrassed him a little bit, like how
It
fanatical
did.
people were
Yeah.
about it.
It. Yep.
Uh, which is kind of like, I don't know, kind of cool because it's like, okay, yeah, fans can't overdo it. But it's also like he was sort of humble about it. Like he could have just been like, yes, worship me and my creations. you know, like I don't know if there's very many artists that actually do that, but I don't know, just becoming too full of himself over it. I mean, maybe for the sake of profitability, he should have done more, taken more advantage of like the Tolkien Society and all that. But anyway, that could be a whole nother stream, I guess. But yeah, World War One, I guess is my point. Jacer says zombies could be Nurgle, all undead. OG HeroQuest might only have two Chaos Gods, Khorne and Nurgle. New HeroQuest follows Dread God, maybe Malal. I don't even know if I'm saying it this even close.
Yeah,
Love
I'm
the
guessing
OG X
this was
Goblin.
probably in reference to when I mentioned that my sort of conception of the
Oh,
HeroQuest, my own personal HeroQuest cosmology has chaos, but doesn't have the specific chaos gods from Warhammer lore.
ah, yes.
I like chaos more as kind of not quite Cthulhu-esque, but like vague, like less personalities with names and more just kind of like this writhing mass of who knows what.
Okay, so this was shared by Bohemius here. Um, are these your 3D prints, Bohemius, of these spawnlings?
Yes.
Nice.
Oh, those are very cool. Wow.
They're small, and they're. It looks like they're
Yeah.
small enough you could almost pin them to the miniature with a piece of sticky tack if you wanted
Oh,
to.
yes.
Or you could just kind of
Yeah,
just
in a
lean
sense,
them against it or
if
something.
if they had to print them, they had to print another 15 miniature in plastic. What do you take away from the expansion? You understand?
Be a lot.
It's always
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah. I mean, and
the
I
same
get it,
problem.
especially when they're saying if depending on, we don't know, sort of what order they designed stuff in, right? If the idea was they came up with the mechanic of, hey, what if there was a monster that like latched onto a hero?
Hmm.
If they make a
Yes.
big miniature, with a tile, it's like you just put the tile on the character card or underneath the
Yeah,
figure on the board, whatever.
and
Like,
then they
but
forget
with a
about it
miniature, then
because yeah, if you clip it to
with
the
a miniature,
miniature,
it's like, what if
there
they
it
get
is.
attacked by, if you get attacked by two or three of them, like, how can you're not going to be able to fit them all in the square.
Oh yeah. Well, I've got enough sticky tack. I could pin all three of those to that one figure there, and he would still stand
Sure,
out.
you could use sticky tack. That's true.
I love sticky tack.
Yeah, I'm
It's
not a
like the
fan
duct
of
tape.
using sticky tack on painted surfaces on miniatures,
Well,
though.
so far I haven't had a problem, but yeah, depending on what varnish you used, I mean it. I could also see it, pulling some of the stuff off. So
Yeah, that would be my worry.
most of my stuff, thankfully, is either solid color or it's just unpainted. So I guess I haven't run into that yet. If I do, I'll let you know. Because like the gray sticky tack I have is really strong, whereas some of the other colors are like they peel off a lot easier. Because the whole point is, you don't damage your wall when you stick your poster to a painted surface. But that's, house paint as opposed to acrylics. Yeah, so I was acknowledging these comments here, and I think once we get that, oh yeah, this is the HeroQuest card game again. We didn't even get to talking about tseuquest yet. That's okay. We can always save that for another stream. There really wasn't anything big about it. It was just the fact that they had an update on the page just saying we're continuing to ship the stuff out. Okay, so back to comments here. Jacer J says Slaanesh was not family friendly. Morcar met Zendich and changed to Zargon. Well,
The inch is the one that changes things.
okay. Well, my understanding was that the Slaanesh was the basically the hedonism
Yes,
deity. See, I thought
that's correct.
this was my what popped into my head. Does anybody remember the movie Wall-E?
Like about the
Wall-E,
robot.
the robot? Yeah. Remember how like the humans they're on that ship and they're all just like so overweight they can't even move and they just watch TV and they have all those little hover chairs. That was my idea of like that's what the elves were turned into by the Slaanesh. So I mean, you could there's different ways you could imagine it. But then what was the point? So we could eat them or steal their gold while they were just watching TV? I mean, come up with your own Your own theory, your own story. I'm just saying, if you wanted to retain the lore and just make it, yeah, a little more age appropriate. Okay, now I'm losing the website. Well,
When we're caught up at this point, the last few comments were while we were just
oh yeah,
summing up everything just now.
hoping for Ratman. Yeah, well, Rob Champ, the Skaven or Skaven, I guess Skaven to me sounds right. Uh, the Ratmen were supposed to be in the Wizard Quest pack, which we never got. So
Although, given that that was
yeah,
being developed by the U.S. crew, I actually wonder if they wouldn't have been called Skaven.
they were going to be called Ratmen.
Yeah, because you got Skaven in the European side in some of the White Dwarf stuff.
It's a weird, it's a weird kind of deal because so that the old theory I think is pretty much dead, that Games Workshop and Milton Bradley were like at odds somehow and fighting over HeroQuest back in the day. Some people believe, and I used to believe, and it used to be something you could read online, that oh, the two companies hated each other and they were fighting over the IP and they had, totally different creative ideas and it was just a big rupture. I don't think there's any evidence for that at all. Like zero.
Yeah, I think it's just
Actually,
that in this pre-internet world, they were just,
rumors.
they had two different crews that were doing two different things.
Yeah, yeah. So Mike Gray, who led the team that did the North American exclusive expansions in 1992, like he met with Stephen Baker and talked with him. Like they shared ideas. They weren't rivals. They were both working for the same company. So, but at the same time, it was like it was understood that they're going to go on and do their own thing. It wasn't like Stephen Baker's like biting his nails, like, oh no, don't ruin my game. Like it wasn't anything like that. And it wasn't like he was brushed off or anything. It was just like, no, we hire you to do this project, and then over here these other people are doing this other thing with it, and over here these other people are doing this other thing. So Estrella did HeroQuest in Brazil, Takara did it in Japan, Mike Gray's team did it in the US, um, Stephen Baker and his people did it in the UK. So, and then you had other countries. I don't know if there were, well, I guess there would have had to have been separate teams for all the adaptations, but I mean, some of it was probably just translation, but I mean, people still had to make, little small, probably little things that I don't even know about because I don't speak the language. But one of the things was this whole question of, well, why weren't they Skaven or Skaven? And I had this harebrained theory, which is probably wrong, but I just thought, well, maybe they had to license each individual character. So it would have been easier for them to say, okay, well, here's the ogres we already paid for. Here's the mercenaries we already paid for. Here's the sorcerers we already paid for. We'll just incorporate them into another pack. But if we want a whole brand new character that's never existed before, now we have to go back and sign all the deals and all this. Maybe it was just easier for them to say, well, here's a creature that's similar, but it's not the same. Like lots of people have rat characters, anthropomorphic, vermin in their story.
I, I I don't
Or
believe they're going to
yeah,
ever do the Skivit, or I mean Ratmans
you don't think they
in
will?
general. I think they're going for reptilian fishmen. They already have the abomination, so they're going to
Murloc.
play
Yeah.
on that. They already create their own set of
Well,
of monster, I believe.
they've also said though that they want to do what people are asking for, and I guess I don't see the entire internet. I just see like little pockets, our little,
Yeah,
community
but they
here and
can
there.
ask
But
also for kills. They cannot give the kills.
that's true. Yeah, there's certain things. But I mean, they could give us lizardmen. Maybe they just call them something else. They could give us rat folk. They could give us, um, yeah. It-
Another one. The
mm,
plant people.
yep.
Plant people, yes, they're already introduced.
Yep.
So,
Yep.
yep.
Jungles of Dalthrak has both good and bad. Spoilers. Well, you already know because you've heard the preview. But yeah, it's like for every type of creature they introduce, there could be good and bad. I mean, we've even seen undead that are not strictly evil, or at least they're on your side. So yeah, pretty much whatever. I don't think we've seen evil dwarves yet, have we? I guess we've seen undead dwarves, evil dwarves.
Yeah, we saw Undead Wars.
Yeah, but I mean, the dwarf quest pack was going to have evil dwarves as an option. So we've already seen evil
Yeah.
elves, evil men.
But you know my opinion. We already got the the Dwarf Quest back.
Well, they definitely did go out of their way to introduce a lot of dwarvy stuff in Jungles of Delthrak, and I would be okay with expanding that a little bit. But at the same time, it doesn't have to be the only one. Just like we got two different elf expansions. Who knows? But yeah, our theories, our predictions. Yeah, so Rob Champ is on the Ratmen train. Yeah, so it makes sense. World War One. He fought in a war, so he wrote about that war, but in particular, more general, but not in particular. Yeah, I get what you're trying to say. Yeah, yep. Yeah, because in a way, he's writing about the wars of the past. He's writing about the wars of legend, but then he's also has his own experiences of war. And yeah, without making it allegorical, he's also making it applicable to the story. Yep. All right, guys. Well, uh, Karningul, Bohemius. I mean, not to drop a bomb at you at the end here, but what is your take on the tseuquest thing? Do you think it's because the guy was not charged with a crime that it's going to be okay, or do you think it's still kind of disastrous? TheRantCast.
I think a very small portion of people who are actually going to get the product they wanted to get.
Hmm. So it's still kind of a
I think it's just a
fiasco.
boondoggle. Like
Yeah.
when I remember when the thing right this started with the Game Zone like anniversary thing where they thought
Yep.
they had managed to acquire the rights at least in
They did.
Spain to use the name.
Well, they did. They did have it.
Yeah,
They
yeah,
there were some problems with the Kickstarters though. They had
yeah.
multiple
The
problems with
Kickstarters kept getting they kept having to switch platforms because the
yeah,
Kickstarters wouldn't let them use it.
right. So eventually,
Um,
yes, Hasbro did secure the rights, but at one time there was yeah, they were able to have it. And they're still able to do it. It's just that they're in the same
yeah, they
position
changed the
now.
name.
Yeah, they're in the same position now as all of these fan modders, people on Etsy and stuff who are selling, Adventure Quest and Sunday Quest and all this sort of thing. It's a a game that obviously is inspired by HeroQuest, but officially isn't.
Right. And
But
yeah, I mean, but it just right from the beginning, it was like it didn't strike me as an intentional scam, but it also very clearly to me smacked of these people don't know what they're getting themselves into. Like
yeah,
they're not going to be able to deliver what they're promising.
it it seems to have been, to say the least, mismanaged. I mean, some people are really still very angry,
I'm
and
sure. Yeah.
and the
But yeah,
question
so
is,
basically
how
my
many of
big
these
picture
orders will they be able to fulfill? Yeah, go
right,
ahead.
yeah, my big picture thing is just that none of this surprises me at all. That I mean, honestly, I guess I'm a little surprised that they are getting any product out the door at all. But
Yeah,
like that it
I
seems like
I
they're
thought it was
having all kinds of logistical trouble getting enough product produced and figuring out how to
mhm,
fund shipping it to the backers and everything. Like the fact that they're having all kinds of trouble doesn't surprise me.
yeah, but I too am. If you would have asked me a couple years ago, I would have thought, yeah, it's never coming out. It's dead. Give up. You know, if you put money into this, it sucks, but it's gone. If they haven't refunded it, it's just gone. And then I know there's some people that are today skeptical and saying, well, okay, it would be in this guy's company's best interest to just whatever product they've got, just sell it, recoup their as much of their money as they can, and then that's the best that we could hope for. And I guess if you really had faith in this and still do, you would say, well, okay, maybe they'll make it right for all the people they made promises to, and then after that they could do something more. But then the question is, would people trust them at that point to do that, or would it just be like, nope, no thanks? Like if I didn't know about the controversy, I'd be like, oh, cool, yeah, I want to buy this. Like, when's it coming out? Oh, it's not out yet. Okay, well, tell me when it's coming out. And I mean, I already have Avalon Hill's version, and I'm pretty satisfied with that. But there's a little part of me that's still curious about this. And a lot of that curiosity was satisfied by the fact that the PDF with the rules was already out. And so it's like, okay, well, this sounds like a bunch of like, fans making, house rules. And it's like, I could use some of this in my own game if I wanted to, just like anything else. But then why do I need to buy the game to do that? But I know there's people out there that would say, well, I wouldn't even support this because it's just a mismanaged project. Like I'd rather support something else that, I feel like was done better. Well, anyway.
Yeah, I'm gonna need a jet.
All right. Well, thanks for joining us. Closing thoughts, either one of you or Bohemius? I guess I've been talking a lot.
No, I was not interested in this the TheRantCast. No, just because it was going to be a fan made of a product. Okay, so it's still a fan made of a product with the inspiration of a product. So at the end, I don't buy fan made stuff because I like to do my own stuff.
Ah, yes. That's what it comes down
Okay,
to.
but I mean, I'm not encouraging. I'm not saying that guys don't buy it. No, there's people that love fan made stuff. I like to play fan made stuff with would be all awesome. Okay, to play with the author of the fan made stuff. It will
Yeah.
actually, yes, it will actually give me the feeling that I want to actually give to the quest. It's not easy. So I can, you know, I like the campaign game. So if you have to, if you have to take a random fan quest, is difficult. It is very difficult. Which one? Well, I don't know. I would like to honor all the authors of this quest. It's difficult to at this
Mhm.
point to keep them all separated.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, my attitude is like, yeah, I don't care about your fan made stuff. I just want to steal your idea and make my own fan made thing out of it. Not to sell it, but just to play it. But then it's so arrogant of
Yeah,
me to say because it's like, well, but I also want to sit down and play it the way you intended so that I can have that experience. And then maybe I'll decide, oh, I'll want to change it or whatever. So it's like I have both feelings at the same time.
I rather play free fan made stuff than something for sale.
Oh yeah,
Um,
for sure.
I,
Rather than pay somebody.
I,
I mean, I bought like
I
dice
took
on Etsy. I bought 3D prints. I regret buying the 3D prints now, but the dice I like.
yeah
But yeah, I haven't bought some of these quest books that people have made. I mean, I could see though a good thing in buying one of these mods just to have the experience of, okay, you got online and you paid somebody and you bought their homemade HeroQuest thing and it kind of disappointed you, but it gave you the sense that like, hey, I could probably do something like this. Like I could probably make something at least as good as this guy did. And maybe it would inspire you to create your own thing. Not necessarily to sell it on Etsy like they did, but you know what I mean? Like it would inspire you. So maybe it's not a negative thing to say that this people are just going to buy this and not make anything. Like I know there's people that would rather buy it and play it rather than create.
yeah
Like some of the motivation for us to create quests as kids was we're not buying you another one. Like this was your Christmas present, this was your birthday gift, that's it. We're not buying all the expansions. It's like, okay, well, so we got to make it ourselves. So you get the blank map out, and you got bored with what was in the box, you create new stuff. Like that can be a
Yeah,
motivation.
but you create a story for the people that you know, or people
Yes.
that you so is
Hmm.
built is engineered to be for these people.
Yep.
I don't know if I express it correctly.
Well, yeah, you're not making it for the entire
You-
world. You're making it for your
Exactly.
friends, your family. You know what they like.
You
Yeah.
can put a stupid joke that they will enjoy it. Maybe the people around the
Yeah.
world will not.
Totally
So
did that.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. I can definitely identify with the stupid jokes. We definitely put lots of those in there.
inside jokes,
Yep.
whatever.
Yep. And it's funny because some of them I didn't even know I was making. Like I won't say what it specifically was, but I was like, I can't believe I actually like that just came out. Like I was thinking it and I didn't realize it was, and I put it in there. Like I was trying to write a serious story and it's like people saw the humorous side of it and they're like, is that the joke about the? And it's like, oh, you're right, it is. Anyway,
Yes.
no idea what I'm talking about, but I know. Wow. So that was the end of the images. So that was Board Game Geek. Um, they get a lot of their dates wrong with the stuff. Like the card game came out in 2020, not 2021. I think even Wikipedia was saying that the Dark Company came out in 1990. It's like, nope, it's 92. I always think that it's like, yes, there could be later printings, but whatever year it says, that's at least the baseline for when it came out. Maybe it came out in December of the previous year or something like that. But anyway, just a nitpicky thing. All right.
Isn't it like
Yeah.
Wikipedia that can be edited?
Yeah. Anybody can edit it, and we as fans could go in there and change it all to the correct stuff. But the problem is now
So
you have the editors. The editors have more power than other people, so if they don't believe us, they're gonna just change it back. Like we have to convince them with sources. So it's kind of a process. So it'd actually be easier just to have our own HeroQuest wiki that has all the stuff we know in there. The article on the crossbow would be
yeah,
really long. So would the article on courage. But you could have multiple points of view. You could say, well, this rule set, and some favor this and da 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 da. So yeah, it's like when they went back to First Light, they were rewriting the rules for a generation of people that didn't necessarily have the previous context. And yet we're still finding areas where they made mistakes. Like they meant to write one thing, but they wrote something else. And they're like, we screwed up. It's supposed to be this. I know it says that, but it's supposed to be this. But people who don't know that will maybe read it and just like us, springboard and come up with their own rule set based on, well, this is what it literally says. And in context, this is how we play it, and we had fun, so that's your request for us now. Until they get online and start arguing with us about it. So it'll be fun for years to come. All right. Well, I guess I got the last word on my own show, so whatever. Well, thanks for joining us. We appreciate Karningul. He had to go. Bohemius, thanks for sticking around, uh, for joining us on the Rantcast. And my voice is almost completely gone. So I think we'll call it there. Thank you once again for watching and listening, supporting us. Eventually, this will get up on YouTube and Spotify as well. Episode 64 of the Rantcast. We'll see if there's anybody we can raid here. Here at the end, as I bring back the flames and we start to listen to Karl Casey again.